Suddenly, a holographic figure appears in front of the guy. She greets her heir and introduces herself as Adriana Balabos G. The woman broadcasts her desire to give the guy, who will have the same will as her, the power to grant magic to anyone and the ability to connect with the help of magical tools. The woman hands the guy a magical object that looks like a sphere. She says that the use of these powers is entirely up to the guy. The automatic doll looks at its owner and tells the reason for its creation. After these words, she fell to the floor. Now she definitely won't be able to help the guy anymore. The guy is Nidu Jin. His life was already over by that point. He is currently repairing a panel in the stairwell. Suddenly, a screwdriver falls out of his hands. He ran to get a screwdriver but suddenly stumbled and flew down. The guy was flying headfirst down, and it seems that he can no longer escape. Suddenly, a girl with sparkling eyes says that she has finally found him. An incomprehensible brilliance illuminates the space. The guy wakes up in some room. He wonders why this happened. Jin gets up in bed and realizes that he is naked. Then the girl turns to him and asks if the master is awake or awake, calling Jin that. The guy did not expect to see a girl in front of him and asked her to wait quite a bit. Then Jin wrapped himself in a sheet to cover his body. He turned to the girl with a question to get an answer about who she was. The girl, pointing at herself with her palm, says that she is an automaton, and the room the guy is in is her mom's research room. Jin didn't even believe at first that the girl was an automaton or a mechanical doll. The girl said that her mother would explain everything to the guy better and asked him to follow her. They enter a room in the center of which lies a magic sphere surrounded by magic sticks. The guy was surprised to see this picture. She greets her heir. Thus, the guy inherited the power of a magic master. Jin decided to sum it up, because he's fine. The guy realizes that his predecessor has been gone for a very long time, and now it's his turn. Nidu realizes that he was saved by a girl, so in any case, he should be grateful to her. Jin realizes that after teleporting, he was cured by this girl, but he can't figure out where his clothes are now. Jin is in a strange position that he is only wearing a towel right now. Now the guy has become a magic master. He decides to try to apply his skill on a towel. He says the spell, but he's not sure if he's doing it right. The towel has become threads from which he can now make anything. Now he understood how his magic worked. Some time passes. The guy is already in a suit and realizes that he does not need a needle or a sewing machine. Jin realizes that it is better for him to focus on the power that has appeared. Now he has to pay attention to the doll, because her skin and clothes are in poor condition, and it needs to be repaired from scratch. Muscles were torn, bones were damaged. Now they are no longer usable. The guy can't believe that it really lasted for about 1,000 years. Jin believes that this automaton doll was created by a previous master. The doll has been in use for a long time, and the guy was wondering what materials were used there. The guy, relying on the memory of his predecessor, understands that there should be a lot of suitable details around. Jin decides to look around. He walks through a large room with comms. He realizes that this must be a preliminary research room. The guy also found a storeroom and several more rooms. In one of the rooms, he found a suitable part for the doll's automaton. This was indicated by details that looked like lanterns and illuminated the room in the distance. The guy goes further and further into the room, which was made up from top to bottom with all sorts of devices. Jin is surprised that all this was created by the previous master. The guy examined each of the devices. He was immensely surprised by every object that was in the room. Suddenly, Nidu saw an unusual thread. He suggested that this thread could be used to make muscles for the doll. The thread was made of a strong but lightweight material. The guy couldn't guess what it could be. He pulled a strand of the threads in order to find out where they come from. But suddenly, an underground spider crawled out from behind the boxes. As it turned out, thread production was his job. Jin was speechless when he saw this creature. Suddenly, the spider started chasing the guy. Nidu ran away from the spider. Suddenly, Jin stumbles and falls face down on the floor. The spider was approaching him. The guy closed his eyes and stretched out his arms in front of him. He thought that his life would end here. But suddenly, the spider came up to the guy's leg and wrapped its paws around it. Jin is very glad that his life has not ended for the second time. He picked up the spider and walked further into the room. He noticed a large pile of minerals, which attracted with its radiance. The guy took enough materials. Now he's going to recreate the doll almost from scratch. He uses various materials and spells to repair the doll. Nido is not sure that he needs to adjust the control mechanism at all. He picks it up and thinks it looks like a program. The guy does not find it easy that he has to write the parameters of the doll's actions in his head. The guy writes programs in the control ball in Japanese. He understands that rewriting all these programs is very tiring. Now that everything is ready, he will be able to launch the doll. He gives the launch command, and energy is released from the magic ball, which is responsible for controlling the doll. And then the guy realizes that it's starting to work. The control mechanism sucks in a lot of magic power. As it turned out, this balloon can even work with the wrong language. Now you can use hiragana, katakana, and kanji. The guy thinks he should try everything. The number of words, speed, and volume are completely different. Jin realizes that he can process everything much faster now, so now his skills are working. The guy realizes that now he can create better things than his predecessor. He decides to get into the control panel of the doll. The guy intends to increase the efficiency of magic and metabolism, then increase the power of the generator. Jin is also going to increase bone absorption and increase stamina. Muscles should also be made of magic threads. This will increase the strength and durability of the doll. And the guy also needs to cover the doll with skin, with constant absorption of magic. The big job is now over. The guy's a little tired, but he thinks he's been there quite a bit. Nido realizes that with the power given to him, he can create anything he wants. And use this magic. Now he can do absolutely anything, and use absolutely any items at any time he pleases. He doesn't want to forget about it. Now the doll is ready. There was a doll on the table, almost ready to work. The last thing that needed to be added to the work was clothes. The guy had a question about how to make fabric for him. He thought about the spider that produces threads. As it turned out, that spider turned out to be a silkworm. Nido picks up the threads and remembers that there was something like a sewing machine in the vault. He decides that he should try to use it. The guy goes into the vault and finds a device there that looks like a sewing machine. At work, the guy thinks that he should give people magical powers. He mentally turns to Adriana Balabaj and thinks that he knows what a woman would like from him. The guy starts weaving clothes from thread. He realizes that he really has no idea about this world. Now his name is Jin, and he is the predecessor of the head. He believes that he has done all the subjects better than his predecessor. He managed to make clothes out of threads. He lifts the doll and puts on her dress, shoes, and a headband on her head. Now the guy is ready to test his theory and began to launch the doll. He created a small magic sphere and launched it into the doll. She didn't react in any way. The guy covered her mouth in surprise to see if she had any signs of work at all. The dolls did not react in any way, despite the fact that the circulation of magic is fine, along with metabolism and generator. The guy does not understand why his work has not been beneficial. He was very hungry. Because he spent all the time in the workshop, he decided to go get something to eat. Well, then he remembers that they are in the pantry. They are in the rooms where he was before. Even the spider has nothing edible. Thinking about it, the guy starts to starve even more. He guesses that if there was at least some food next to him, it would hardly be edible. Suddenly, the guy notices the teleportation gate. He guesses that they must be connected to many cities. Jin is going to use them. He stands in the center of the circle and pours magic into it, thereby activating the teleporter. Suddenly, the guy's clothes went at the seams, from which strange highlights escaped. The guy realizes that this whole situation is taking on a strange look. As it turned out, there was an overload in the mechanism. Despite the overload, the guy still teleported to an unknown place. He was landed by a huge magic ball in the middle of the trees. This picture was noticed by a girl who was collecting something in a basket. She did not take her eyes off the magic ball and suddenly noticed how the guy was collapsing right in front of her feet. The guy wakes up on the bed, doesn't understand where he is. They are approached by a girl who saw him as soon as he landed after teleportation. She was holding a towel in her hands, and as soon as she noticed that the guy had regained consciousness, she ran out of the room with a scream and surprise. The guy was at a loss because he did not understand what had just happened. He decided to look out of the room through the window. He sees trees and some buildings around him, realizing that this is definitely not his research room. A woman approached the guy. She believes that he was a little tired. The woman explains that the guy was lying unconscious on the edge of the forest, and she decided to bring him here. This woman introduced herself as Masa, and the girl who saw the guy then in the forest and is now holding the hand of a woman is her granddaughter, whose name is Hannah. The woman explains that Hannah was one of those who found the guy. The guy introduces himself as Jin Nidu. He is very happy to meet the girl. He leans closer to her and thanks her with a smile that the girl saved him then. Hannah was embarrassed and hid behind her grandmother. Masa asked not to pay attention to the behavior of her granddaughter. She asked the guy how it happened that he ended up lying in the woods. Jin would have liked to answer the question, but he was interrupted by a rumbling from his stomach. Jin began to justify herself and tell the woman that this was not something she could have thought of. And Masa burst into loud laughter and guessed that the guy was hungry. In fact, she knew about it. The woman says that, as the well-known proverb says, an empty belly is deaf before speech. Guided by this, she asked the guy to wait a little so that she could cook for him. Jin thanked her sincerely. There is an empty plate and mug on the table. The guy ate everything and thanked Masa for his care. As it turned out, the guy explained everything to the woman. She says she has never heard of a teleportation gate. She thinks it might be some kind of dark artifact, because there is definitely no such thing in their village. She also thinks it might be a relic from ancient times. Jin asks the woman about the ancient relics. She explains that these are magical artifacts created before the Great Demon War. The guy was surprised to ask about the Demon War, and the woman looked at him reproachfully and asked him not to say that the guy did not know about this event. Jin was forced to lie, and with an incomprehensible smile, he said that he had only heard a little about it. He politely asked the woman to tell him about it. Masa realized that she would do nothing about it. And she would have to tell everything. A long time ago, about 300 years ago, there was a war in their place between humans and some kind of species from another planet. The battle was so fierce that 2/3 of the population died. Then the demons staged a cataclysm. They destroyed half of those who possessed magic on this planet. The woman says that it was because of this that their civilization fell back 1,000 years ago, and many technologies were lost forever. Jin realizes that it was about after Bella G ended her life. A lot of time has passed since then. No wonder no one remembers this. The woman understands that the guy cannot return without the teleportation gate. She decides that the guy should find this gate as soon as possible, and until then he can stay with her. The guy looks at the woman in surprise. Jin says that he has nothing to repay Masa for her kindness and food. The woman objects and says that she saved the guy because she was glad to see Hannah's concern. Masa explained that since her parents died, she has been gloomy all the time. The guy who heard this story of the girl decided to become her friend if her grandmother would not mind. Masa said it was a great offer. She would be very grateful to the guy if he could keep Hannah company. The woman called the girl to her. She asked Hannah to show the guy around and grab some water along the way. She obediently agreed. The guy leans a little towards the girl and asks her to show the village. She agrees, and after a while they set off. Suddenly, on the way, the guy noticed one building. He understands that the economy in this place is really poor. He realizes that he is not even near the research room. Jin thinks that the war has hit the technical development of this place very hard. In his thoughts, the guy is distracted by one man. He is happy to say that Hannah's baby has returned. He notices that the guy has regained consciousness and is interested in how he feels now. Jin asks with incomprehension that the man could be one of the villagers. He agreed and introduced himself as Roku Oshiku. Jin introduced himself and said he was glad to meet Rock. The girl standing next to me introduced herself as Barbara. She pointed at her grandfather, who was also the village head. His name is Kimbeku. The village headman is interested in the guy about what he is going to do. Jin replies that he has decided to stay at Hannah's house for now. The headman immediately frowned and agreed on the condition that the villagers would accept him as long as he did not cause a problem. The guy really likes it here, because this place is very quiet and peaceful. The guy is approached by Hannah and asks if he is alright. Jin nods approvingly and thinks that he has no choice after all. Yes, and he will have to cope on his own. The girl and the guy hit the road again. Jin asks Hannah where the villagers usually get their water. The girl points to the side with her finger and led the guy to the well. The guy realizes that they are using buckets to collect water. The girl pointed to the rope, and the guy said that he would help to get water. They're walking back to the house. Jin wonders if she always does such hard work. The girl was surprised because this is their daily work. The guy, looking at the water in the bucket, suddenly thought about his power to give a magical blessing and the ability to connect magical tools. Jin decided to do something. He asks Masa if there's a blacksmith in the village, a man who works with copper and iron. The woman looked thoughtfully at the guy and said that he could consider the former workshop of this house because there was a lot left. The woman led the guy into a large room. She explained that the former owner of this house used this place as a blacksmith shop before he left this world. The woman doesn't know what the guy wants to do, but she said he can use whatever he wants. Jin thanked her and got to work. The guy touched a piece of metal and tried to determine what it was. Most of all, it looked like an alloy of copper in his. These metals seemed familiar to the guy, so he thought that the work would go quickly. Suddenly, he spread his arms to the sides, calling for a piece of iron metal to transform. A magical halo appeared around him. The girl was incredibly surprised when she saw this picture. Hannah, with burning eyes, interestingly asks the guy what it was. She suggests that they might be a wizard. He understands that she is not far from the truth. The material made turned out to be quite heavy, so they will need a cart. The guy made some parts and put them in the cart. The girl was very happy about it. Jin said Hannah could get in the cart and push the handle. The girl did everything as the guy said, and she went. Now they need to install a well. They set off. Suddenly, Barbara is talking to Masa. Barbara is not sure if it is worth leaving the girl with this guy. The woman assures the girl that everything will be fine, because the guy does not look like a bad person. Barbara doubtfully agrees and suddenly notices that Hannah and Jean are standing in the distance. Hannah looks happily at her grandmother. And Barbara asks in perplexity what the guy put on the well. The girl is angry because she does not understand why the guy covered the well. In response, Jin asked only to wait a little while until he finished the case. The guy says with a smile that this is a water pump and there is nothing complicated about it. It will greatly help the villagers to get water. Barbara just looked at the guy in disbelief. Instead, Hannah ran up to the device and, at the direction of the guy, began to raise and lower the pump handle. The water began to gurgle down the pipe, and after a few moments, it poured out. Hannah was surprised that the water was pouring. Barbara couldn't believe her eyes, and Masa wondered how this could happen. The guy explains that this is an ordinary object. He says that when you lower and raise the handle, the water is sucked in by the cylinder. Now Masa guessed why the guy needed copper. Suddenly, Hannah calls out to Gina. She is now happy to say that now she will gain water faster thanks to the guy. Jin looked at her with a smile and told her to use it for her health. It's been a few weeks. The guy realizes that he needs to do something with these boards. Here he is, distracted by Oshiku. The man says his cart is very good. Jin says he is very glad that his guns came in handy. Oshiku told the guy that the headman was very happy when Jin fixed his stall. The headman even thought that Jin might stay in the village for a while. The villagers were glad that their houses were now in good working order. It was now much easier to collect water, and even more so to transport materials and products. The guy realized something. He mentally addresses these reflections to Adriana Balabozji. He guesses that the Magic Master's mission is to make everyone happy. The guy thinks about it and looks into the distance. He notices clouds of smoke in the mountains. Jin notices smoke on the mountain. Suddenly, Hannah notices this and asks why the guy is always looking at the Mountain of Death. Jin wonders why this mountain is called that. The girl explains that birds that approach this area fall unconscious. Hannah believes that this is due to the miasma that comes out of the mountain. Jin believes that the miasma may be volcanic gas. The guy understands that if there is volcanic gas on that mountain, then it is likely that there is a hot spring there. Hannah called the guy home. After a while, Jin got used to living in this place. Despite the fact that sometimes there are some difficulties, Hannah brought a bucket of water so that Jin could wash himself, because, in her opinion, it is very relaxing. Jin wipes his body with a towel and realizes that he does not feel relaxed at all. Adaptation takes too much time and effort. The guy used bronze ore to make a water pump. Jin thinks he will have to use the kettle and stove to heat the water and take a bath. Jin remembers a possible hot spring in the mountains. The guy is unhappy because without special tools he will not be able to find the location of the source. It seems to the guy that using magic can solve this problem. He touches the ground with his hand and applies the skill of geological measurement. A large magic circle appears on the ground around him. The guy would like to find the exact location of the hot spring. But now the priority is to find minerals. Suddenly, the guy sensed their location. He believes that in order to come and dig something up, he will need to get permission from the village headman. The guy came to the village headman. The man said that none of the residents had ever found hot water from all available wells. Barbara supports Jean's proposal. She says that hot springs are very good for health, and it would be nice if there was at least one. The headman says that he doesn't mind the guy's ideas if they are aimed at the benefit of the villagers. The man thanked the guy for the water pump, and he said it wasn't difficult. The headman tells the departing guy that a group of merchants will arrive in their village soon. The man explains that every 2 months, merchants bring salt, sugar, food, local products, and clothes. Jean turns to Barbara and says that he has never seen the locals use any currency. The girl explains with a smile that the residents exchange products with each other. After these words, the guy realizes that he found himself in a small village. The headman asks you to contact him if the guy needs anything. After all, he hopes that Jin is trying for the sake of the village. The guy thanked the headman and set off on his way. The guy walks with a cart full of wood and thinks that the lack of currency in the village makes life very uncomfortable. The guy can't do anything about it at the moment. Deep down, he would like to help a lot more. Suddenly, the guy is distracted from his thoughts by Hannah, who pulls on his sleeve, and her friends. Jin asks the guys how they were able to hide and fit in the cart. Hannah didn't answer the question and asked the guy what he was going to do. Jin says he's going to build a hot spring. Then the guys in unison began to inundate the guy with questions about what a hot spring is and why exactly Jin should build it. The guy just told the guys to calm down a little. They came to the construction site. Jin explains that first he needs to make a bathing area. To do this, he is going to use the use of earth magic. Jin applies the skill, and depressions appear in the ground that will come down to locate the water. The kids think it's going to be a hot spring. The guy explains that this is just the beginning. The guy uses the skill to fill the pits with water. The children loved everything. The guy decided to inspect his work and dipped his hand into the water. She was so hot that steam was pouring off him. Suddenly, Jin notices that the children have already rushed to the spring as fast as they can, taking off their clothes along the way. The guy somehow managed to detain them and said that the water in the spring was very hot. Instead of a hasty swim, Jin offers the guys a job so they can help him build a roof and fence. The children, already with tablets in their hands, happily agreed. The guy said with a smile that he would count on the guys. Suddenly, Jin remembers the orphanage, the place where he was left and raised. The guy wonders if everything is all right there now. Hannah distracts the guy from his thoughts. She reproachfully asks for help with installing the fence. Jin apologizes and gets to work. Children look at the work done with amazement and pride. They made a beautiful hot spring bathhouse. Initially, Jin only planned the construction. Hannah went to the smallest pool and said that it was too small to swim in it entirely. Then they explained to the girl that this was a place to rinse her feet. The guy says with a smile that now he can let the children become the first guests as a reward for helping with the construction of the spring. The guy does not have time to finish and splashes fly into his face. The kids were already swimming and playing in the spring, not understanding why the guy was not in a hurry to them. Jin exhales with relief, because for the first time in a long time, he was able to relax. Hannah called Jean. The girl hands him a small, round stone on her palm. She thinks it might be a gemstone, and decided to ask Jin about it. The guy carefully examines the stone. One of the boys says that he has already found such stones on the riverbank and in other places. Jin does not deny that it may be an ordinary stone. The guy uses the skill of analysis. As it turned out, the found thing is a magic stone from a volcano. Jin understands that this stone can be of great benefit in the future. A few days have passed. Merchants came to the village. One young guy cheerfully invites customers and offers them a look at a brand new product. Jin is surprised at how many people have gathered to look at the merchant's goods. In fact, he would also like to go and see them. Barbara is calling Jean. The girl says that the headman wants Jin to come to the well. The guy arrived at the place, and there the merchant Roland and the headman were already waiting for him. The guy reciprocated by saying his name and expressing his joy at the new acquaintance. Roland apologizes in advance for forcing the guy to come to him. Despite this, he has one question for the guy. Jin listens attentively. Roland explains that this village has changed significantly since his last visit, which was about 2 months ago. He says that now all the houses and fences are in good condition, and carts greatly simplify the work in the village. The most special thing Roland noted for himself was the water pump. The man considers this invention revolutionary. Roland continued to talk about his surprise. The guy interrupted the man's narration and asked him to get down to business. Roland sincerely hopes for the guy's understanding. Roland explains that he really believes that this water pump is very valuable. The merchant refers to the village headman and says that he said who is the author of this invention. Jin confirms the man's words. Roland, full of confidence and determination, asks to sell him this device. Jin refuses this request with a calm expression on his face. The men did not expect to hear such an answer. The merchant immediately grabbed the guy by the hand and began to persuade him to sell in various ways. He assures that a large amount will not be a problem, and after the sale, the guy will be able to have everything he wants. The headman turns to the guy and asks him why he refuses, because selling the pump will not cause any harm. Jin, hearing these words from the village headman, asked him to follow him. Jin brought them to his forge. The guy explains that he spent all the materials he had in order to build a water pump, trolleys, and restore everything in the village. The merchant offered to supply the materials, but Jin refused, despite the fact that he used to do this for his convenience. Now he is not in the mood to build something like this, and he has another thing in his plans. If Jin agrees, then the goods will be different from the first one. Then the merchant asks just to transfer the skills. Here the guy remembers the words of Adriana Bellebogie, that she gave the guy a great magical power that can conquer anyone. Jin remembered this, and said that he had magic power, and he would be able to sell the merchant a way to make all these useful things. Roland looked at the guy questioningly. A guy named Eric comes into the forge. He apologizes for being late and says that he is very pleased to meet those present. Eric says that he took a look at the car, and now he can safely say that Jin is a powerful wizard. The guy did not expect to hear this and asked Eric about it. Eric asked Jin not to worry. He explains that he is not jealous of the guy at all. Even though Eric uses magic too, he can't make the same complex object. Roland explains that Eric studied at the Cecilio Magic Academy, which means that he is much better versed in this topic than the merchant. Jin understands everything. Jin proceeds to explain. There is a bronze ore on the table in front of him. The guy says that the first thing you need to do is make a cylinder out of metal. Jin says that the mechanism of operation of a water pump is that when a person pulls a lever, air will create pressure on the piston and suck water into the cylinder. Each part of the pump is made of this bronze ore. Eric is watching intently. Jin, having transformed the material, says with a smile on his face that part of the work is done. Eric asks in disbelief what the guy has done now. Jin explains that the outer shell that connects it to the cylinder. Eric is in complete shock. Dumbfounded, he asks Jin why he should be able to do something like this. Jin began to understand something. Now he understands what it really means to feel like an extraordinary person. Jin wants to cheer Eric up. He says that now the merchant has the opportunity to practice while they trade in the village. Jin suggests Eric take him to the hot springs to get some rest. Eric agreed. Jin comes to the decision to spread some of these abilities. After all, he is the only one who can help these people to make these masterpieces. Jin promises himself to do his best. Here he is, distracted by Roland and Eric. They ask the guy in shock if he really built the hot spring. They eagerly ask to be taught to do the same. Eric turns to Jin. He wants the guy to evaluate the pump he made. Jin appreciated the work. This pump can be considered ideal. Jin praises Eric. Eric exhales with relief and agrees. Immediately, Eric became interested in what Jin was doing so interesting. There was an incomprehensible device on the table in front of the guy, and several parts and materials next to it. As it turned out, Jin is making a gas stove, which is used to light a fire. Jin and Eric are walking through the woods. Eric says that the gas stove is an incredible magic tool. Jin is doing well, and he feels relieved. It was thanks to the magic stone that he picked up in the river. Previously, it seemed to the guy that there were no resources in the village. Jin, with a smile on his face, tells Eric that the thermal output method and magic control still require improvements. He is going to show them later. Eric says that he really didn't want anything more than to create a pump, because for him these things may seem complicated. Eric is pleased with his achievements, but he understands that he still has a lot to learn. The guy guessed that Jin was from another country. If this is really the case, then he needs to pay taxes. Jin remembered that. Eric says the tax collector will arrive in the fall. Jin suggested that he should pay taxes in cash. Eric says that's not the case. He had heard that Kane's village was not the only one in the area, but the currency turnover was still bad. Jin believes the guy's words. Eric explains that every year the tax collector stops at the village of Toka which is located in a neighboring village, and it takes about 3 days to get to it by horse. Jin realizes that during this time, he needs to figure out a way to build a car. Suddenly, Eric's father calls and says that it's time for them to go. Eric waved to Jin and said they would meet again sometime. Jin looks after the departing cart and thinks about the tax collector. The guy decided to take a walk in the woods. Jin saw Hannah, and they wished each other good morning. As it turned out, Hannah came to the forest in order to collect tea leaves. The girl explained that she also collects tree sap, allowing it to merge into cups. Jin knows that tree resin is an incredible resource that will do for the production of rubber for a trolley. The guy thanked the girl for collecting this juice so regularly. He hadn't even thought about this material before. Everything worked out for the guy at a convenient time. Now he can finally mix tires with rubber. Jin understands that the product must be made soon. Jin is going to pair up the parts. This work requires exceptional skill, in addition to the unusual details. Jin thinks there's a problem with the rubber. He believes that it needs to be saturated with sulfur so that it becomes more elastic. Due to the fact that natural rubber is very hard, it is necessary to add sulfur. Now Jin knows that there is demand near the hot springs. The guy melts the materials. Now he is going to test the obtained materials for elasticity. He settled on one option. However, there was not enough paint. But this was not a problem. If the product turns out to be working, then Jin wants to continue doing something similar. Now the guy is thinking what to do with the remaining rubber now. He decided to do something unusual. The next morning, Hannah and her friends woke the guy up and asked him to look at one thing. Hannah put her friends in the cart, and she stood by the handle. Jin asked what she was going to do. Hannah tensed up and rolled the cart with her friends. She thinks it's a lot of fun, and tells Jin that he's very strong. The guy praises her and says it works. The girl began to sulk because she realized that she had wasted her time. Jin says with a smile that it was an improved version of the trolley. Hannah is angry because the guy made her think that she was really strong. The guy hands her a rubber ball as an apology. Jin shows how he can jump high. Hannah was incredibly surprised by the rubber ball. The girl crumples the ball in her hands and realizes that it is made of tree resin. Jin says that the wheels of the cart were also made of this resin. The guy says that they can play in the water because he holds on to it well. Jin looks after the guys while they play with the ball in the water. Barbara approaches the guy. She thanks Jin for looking after them and spending time with them. Jin asks if the girl has returned the magic stone. Disappointed, she agrees. Barbara was saddened by the fact that the entrance to the source would be paid. Barbara asks what is this thing that makes Hannah swim so easily. Jin explains that he called it a float. Barbara had never heard of such a thing. The residents did not notice how autumn came. The leaves of the trees were falling to the ground, and Jin and Hannah talked about it on the way home. After these words, Jin begins to remember things from Japan, because this world also has seasons in the year. Suddenly, Jin did not notice how he almost ran into a horse. From the animal's side, it sounded as if someone had apologized. The genie thought that a horse in this world is capable of conversation. The voice refuted these guesses and asked to look at the horse from the other side. As it turned out, there was a girl who got stuck in a harness. She asked the guy to help him, but Jin wasn't sure if the girl needed help at all. The girl stood on the ground and thanked for the help. She said she was going to Kane's village, and, having accidentally accelerated, she lost her balance while riding a horse. The guy, hearing about the village, asked what the girl was doing and apologized in advance for the rude question. The girl explained that the village would be her next target for tax collection. The girl introduced herself as Lithia Falhate. Jin and Hannah also introduced themselves to the girl and said that they lived in the village of Kana. In this case, Lithia asked to show the way to the village. The guy agreed. Together they reached the village. Lithium is very grateful to the guys because they helped her a lot. The girl explains that this is the first task from the king for her because she has only recently become a noble person in the kingdom. Although she does not look like any of them, Lithia explained that, in simple words, she was a commoner who had been granted the title of knight only recently. The girl received the title because of her father's combat achievements. She can become a knight if she does well with taxes. A guy understands the girl's purpose. She wants to become a knight because she believes that she should benefit people. It is clear from the girl that she wants to achieve her goal in any way. Lithium apologizes for the fact that the guys have to listen to this. Jin showed the girl the headman's house and said that he was not at home right now. Lithium asks if the guys in the village really have water pumps like that. The girl explains that this thing was only recently released in the palace. She says Mr. Roland was the first. Hannah suddenly started fussing and said that the first one who did it was Jean. Lethia asked her not to tease her like that, because it couldn't be. Hannah got angry and said that Jin was a real master. The girl agreed with a soft smile and said that she would discuss it with the head of the village later. Hannah humbled her with a displeased look. The girl asks the guy why he didn't say anything about his creation. The guy thought about it and assumed that Eric had done this in other villages. Jin is fine as long as people can live a more comfortable life. The girl looked at the guy in surprise. In fact, it's the best outcome for a guy not to mess with officials. He only cares about materials that can be useful for everyday life. Hannah thinks that's the whole essence of a guy. Lethia asks the headman if they have problems with taxes in their village this year. The man explains that they are doing well in this regard. The man asks when the tax collector is going to go to the village of Taka. Lithium is going there tomorrow. The headman believes that this may be a bit of a hasty decision, since the girl is most likely tired. The man remembers the previous tax collectors, but the girl interrupts him and asks her not to compare with her predecessors. Lithium asks another question about the fact that buying a water pump was very expensive. The man explains that everything was done instead of them. The girl guesses that Jin did it. The headman says that the items Roland possesses were provided and instructed by Jin. Lethia was shocked by the fact that Hannah was telling the truth at the time. The headman couldn't even believe it. The man says that the guy has done a lot of stuff lately. Lethia roused herself and asked to see these items. The headman asked Barbara to do it. Lithium saw a rubber ball, wheels on a cart and a gas stove, and after that, she and Barbara rested in a hot spring. Barbara says these amazing springs are very relaxing. Lithium guesses that they were also invented by Jin. Lethia, after seeing the guy's work, realized that this was enough to get the title of knight. Barbara found it incredible that the girl aspires to the title of knight. Lethia is not very enthusiastic, because she does not know what else she has to do. Barbara suggests that Lethia discuss this problem, since she decided to stay late. After bathing, the girls went to the Jin. Barbara informed the guy that they had a little problem. Lethia came to apologize to the guy, because she thought Hannah was teasing her. The guy says there's nothing wrong with that. Lithium lists all the guy's creations, and says that they are all useful for everyday life. Lethia says she has a dream of becoming a knight, but she's not sure that's how she helps people. Jin says he's not a great man at all. His magic is amazing, but he got it from someone else. The guy admits that he can't do it himself. Personally, he does not consider it magic, but as a service, he wants to continue this business. It's all because that's what Jin is capable of. He is sure that Lithium can do absolutely anything, and she only needs to start. She wonders if she can do it too. The guy agrees and says that he has been looking for an answer for a long time. Lithium says this is true. She thanks the guy for the advice. Lethia says with a smile on her face that she, as a tax collector, wants to ask for a favor. She's on her way and she's going to need some luggage carts. Jin agrees. He didn't expect it to be needed so soon. He went into the warehouse and counted the carts. A total of 12 pieces came out. Jin, after thinking about it, decides to make several amendments to the trolley devices. Jin had completely forgotten at work that he was repairing a doll in the laboratory. He wonders if she's working now or not. He thinks he should check on the doll after he gets home. At this time, the doll in the laboratory woke up. The doll is on its way. Suddenly, she meets a huge monster on her way. She angrily says that he is bothering her, and uses the thunderclap skill. She hits the monster with her power. The girl cleared this sector of monsters. Now she can safely complete the installation of the teleportation gate. The doll begins teleporting back to the lab. Instead of the laboratory, she landed in an unknown place again. The doll would like the transportation radius to be a little wider. It would be better if he could handle the interference magic. The girl understands that the exit of the teleportation gate from uncontrolled is troublesome. She looks at the device and realizes that she can't give up now. I'm really sorry that the doll couldn't find a solution sooner. She thought everything would be fine as long as she didn't lose track of her father. When she finished rebooting, her father was nowhere to be found. The doll is sure that after completing its mission, it will begin the process of decomposition. She remembers that her mother has already left. She realizes that her new body is her father's work. The doll thinks she should thank him for that. She walks around the lab, goes to the library and the warehouse, but she can't find her father anywhere. Then she thinks he's gone. To be precise, since the doll does not have a long-range radar, she will not feel his aura. She suggests that the father may have gone outside the laboratory. The girl enters the room and notices the teleportation gate. She notices that they have been activated and guesses that the father has been through this. The doll is interested in where teleportation leads. She can't find the exact destination. The doll needs to get ready. She found the gate installation guide. She gets into trouble. She needs to get bandages and medicines. The doll is going to use magic stones to do some things when it's all over. The doll turned out to have a large backpack with things. She thinks that should be enough. Now she is ready to go in search of her father. The doll had to overcome a long way and cope with many monsters. She walked with only one purpose. She teleported a dozen times, but still hasn't found her father. Even so, the little android continued to search in the dark from the void for many years, 8 moons and 27 suns. She has crossed many worlds. The doll can't stop. Her goal is still incomplete. She chooses the next destination on the teleportation gate. She lands in an unknown area. As it turned out, these were snowy mountains, and it seemed that setting up a gate here was impossible. Now she will have to look for a completely different place. The girl couldn't move because she was waist-deep in snow. A monster suddenly appears in front of her, looking like a man with a lot of hands. He was so terrible that he inspired fear with his appearance. He opens his mouth and stretches his hand towards the snowy peak. It was Hekaton here, an armed giant. The doll believes that this giant was attracted by the magical aura of teleportation, or the monster considered her its prey. In any case, the impact of his palm on the surface was too close to it. He was so huge that the girl was below his knee. Suddenly, the monster swings with all his strength and arm, although to brush away the girl, but she was able to hide behind a shield. The doll admits that it's hard for her. She should throw away her things and fight properly. At this moment, she notices that the giant has grabbed a large stone and thrown it in her direction. The doll boldly thrust his fist forward, and as soon as the stone touched her hand, it shattered. The doll realizes that she has no other choice. Now she applies her skill and increases the speed of information processing. It increases its power. The doll is going to initiate a sequence of selecting elementary materials to form a magical weapon. She also needs to initiate a reinforcement mechanism. It is also necessary to activate the external radiation of magic fibers and start a completely offensive technique. A magical sphere appeared in front of the doll, which struck with its destructive power. It turned out to be a mana explosion. From the magic ball, she sent a stream of magic towards the giant. He shone with a huge light. And then the doll decided that the attack was over. Doll realizes that her father's improvements are incredible. In the distance, she felt a magical aura. Even though she was very weak, she feels that this aura belongs to her father. She took her things and happily headed in the direction of her father. The girl mentally turns to him and asks her to wait because she will find him soon. She wants him to be all right. At this time, work is underway in the village. Rock comes up to the guy and says that the guy should rest. Jin asked me not to worry about him. The man said that the guy needed to wait a little longer. With the new material, they will be able to walk until sunset. The man appreciated the guy's contribution in reducing travel time. Jin says that it still brings difficulties because he can only finish the work in 2 or 3 days. The guy was embarrassed because he understands that he can do anything to make the work easier for the residents. The man laughingly asked not to make such a facial expression. Rock says there's an important job for the guy after all. After all, if these things break, then the guy is the only one who can fix them. Rock urges the guy to save his strength because they can be useful at any moment only. The tax collector understands that only a guy can do this. Suddenly, the guys are attracted by something incomprehensible in the distance. As it turned out, this was what unnerved me during the journey. Strange iron creatures stood in front of them, one of which broke a cart with goods. Jin was surprised and wondered who it could be. As it turned out, a golem appeared in front of them. Lithia ordered everyone to step back. She says that first of all, it is necessary to develop an action plan. She did not have time to negotiate, as one of the residents rushed at the enemy, because he was angry with him, because he destroyed his crops. The men were worried about the guy, because he attacked an enemy that he could not handle. The guy started using magic, because he didn't want one of the villagers to take his life in front of his eyes. He uses the skill of attraction and attracts the man to the others. Lithium gives the command to retreat again because it's getting more dangerous here. The girl notices that all the goods are destroyed. She decides to prevent damage to the monsters. The guy says that the girl's action won't work against him either. She doesn't listen to the guy and still acts in her own way. She swings with all her might and strikes at the monster's leg. Her sword was broken in half. The guy did not expect that the golem's coating would be so durable. The girl wanted to make a decision, but did not have time, and the monster threw her aside with one blow. Everyone was worried about the girl and shouted at her to leave. Or the fourth one is sure that she will not run. She says she has pride, even though she is a novice knight. She doesn't understand what use she will be, even if she can't protect people's property. She says knights are born to protect. With tears in her eyes, she points the broken sword towards the enemy. She says that if she is able to do something now, she will definitely do it. She rushes towards the enemy again. I do not listen to reproaches from the outside. The girl still managed to knock down the monster, but he did not receive any injuries and began to get up again. Jin realizes that he has to do something. He won't be able to hold the monsters for long. The guy wonders how he can help. But suddenly, he remembers that he has water. He decides to improve the bottle so that it is easier to control the jet. The girl landed on the ground. She couldn't get up because of the pain. She noticed that the monster's huge hand was pointing in her direction, when the guy realized that he needed to act urgently. When the magical transformation was over, he released his attack. It was so powerful that it was able to cut through the golem's coating. The monster split in half with a creak and fell to the floor. He fell apart, hitting the girl a little. Lithia didn't understand what was going on here. At this time, Jin notices that there are several more golems around them. He dealt with them. He worries about Lithia, asking if she is all right. The girl agrees and asks what it was. Jin explains that he was able to conjure something. He doesn't interpret spells very well, but it's good that he made it in time. The guy notices that he has touched another cart with goods. Rock says that everything is in a mess. The girl apologizes. She says if she was stronger, she could stop this thing. Rock considers it a miracle that they at least survived and no one was injured. The man who first rushed at the monster says that these tasks are very creepy only. He's only been hit once, and his arm still hurts like it's been the hell. Lithium expressed its desire to take a look. Jin was surprised that the tax collector would recognize the magic of healing. The girl casts a spell, and the wound on the man's arm begins to heal. After a while, he was able to bend his arm as if there were no wounds. He thinks it's incredible. After that, all the merchants began to praise the girl, saying that she was a good knight. Rock is sincerely grateful to the girl for her help. She says that the man should not hesitate to contact them, because this is her job. I'm telling you that if someone gets hurt, you need to come to her and tell her about it. After the fight, the guys made a halt. Rock asked the guy what he could do with the broken carts now. The cart is completely broken. Rock says they still have wheat left. Jin realizes that it is possible to try to benefit from the golem. After all, the girl says that someone should control him on the way here. Jin pulls an item out of the golem and believes he can deal with them. Even if this is not the case, he is still going to use it for his own purposes. Lithia says they don't have much time after all, and the guy needs to hurry up. Meanwhile, the guards are on patrol. Suddenly, one of them notices a dangerous silhouette in the distance. It turned out that the golem was carrying carts of wheat. The guards thought that the village might be attacked and pointed their spears towards the unknown. Suddenly, Lithium jumped out in front of them and asked them to lower their weapons. The girl explained to the guard later that this golem was their servant. The man calmed down and let the merchants into the village. The golem was instructed to put all the wheat in a certain place. Jin calmly controls the device. He orders him to put all the goods in a certain place. Rock finds it impressive because this thing is 3 times the size of an ordinary person. Rock asks the guy if he can really handle the golem. The guy says he can rewrite the program and everything will be fine. The man does not understand everything that Jin says. He still feels calm. He asks the guy to say the golem's name again. At this time, Lithia looks at her reflection in the sword fragment. Jin distracts her and tells her that they have time to rest a little. Lithia smiles and tells the guy not to worry about her. She still has responsibilities. They understand that the protection of the village can be entrusted to Gon. Jin says that everything will be fine and asks you to believe him. The girl smiles and looks sadly at the sword fragment. She says she forgot to reforge it, and now it's broken. Jin says the same thing happens to people. If they don't work on themselves, they can rust, and one day they will get what they deserve. The girl agrees with a smile. She shows the piece to the guy and tells him to look at it. She thinks she should have fixed it earlier. The girl had completely forgotten about it when they were next to the blacksmith. In fact, she wanted to use this sword longer. The guy says, with a serious look, that he earns money from this business. He says he can fix the sword for her. The girl is not quite sure, but she holds out her sword to the guy. He begins to apply various spells to the ball so that it takes its original shape. As a result, the sword shone like new. He handed the sword back to its owner with a smile. Lethia touches the sword with her finger and finds this branch of magic strange. Lethia remembers that she never thanked Jin for everything he had done for her. She asks what the guy would like. Jin says he doesn't need anything. The girl offers to introduce the guy to the king as a master of magic crafting. Jin finds this problematic because he would like to do research and then return home. The girl was surprised and admitted that, to be honest, she had no idea how she needed to report this golem. The guy was surprised because he did not think that the girl should report this. Lithium explains that this is part of her job. Upon hearing this, Jin asked the girl not to write anything about him in her report. He doesn't think anyone should know about him right now. She is not sure that she will be able to fulfill the guy's request. She says that sooner or later they will find out about him anyway. The guy inhales and says he'll deal with it when it happens. Lithium finally understood the guy's request. She says she will help. She thinks it's enough to show her appreciation. She asks to stay with her if the guy ever ends up in the Citadel. Jin smiles and agrees. He says that now he would like to sort things out and return to the village. And Lithium offers to practice her first blow with a new sword on the guy. After the taxes of Toka village were sent, the people decided to return to Kaina village. After the golem's attack, the number of accompanying people increased, but turning to the golem ended all fears. The guy thinks that maybe it's because of the race, but he no longer sees any signs of attackers. He also didn't get any useful information from the other golem. Jin realizes that he has to come up with a way to solve this problem. He has plenty of other work to do right now. Jin returns to the village. The children run to him and wave. Hannah hugs him and is happy to be back. Jin realizes that it's good that he got to the village without incident. He's full of thoughts right now. Hannah asks Jin if everything is okay, because she sees that the guy is worried about something. Jin explains that he was unable to collect enough materials to repair the golem. He says that in order to get it in decent condition, he took the parts of another golem. Hannah took the magic sphere and said it was very beautiful. Jin explains that this thing is a necessary part of a doll or golem. Hannah asks if they can use this stone for home inventions. The guy explains that it would be a crime to use it for such simple things. Hannah doesn't quite understand, but she thinks she's seen something like this on Death Mountain before. The guy thinks that all the inventions of her predecessor are rare and made of high quality. He tells the girl that he wants to collect materials and invites her to go with him. Hannah agrees. The guy wonders if the golem will go with them. Hannah climbs up the servant and holds out her hand. She's ready to hit the road. The guy remembers how the girl was afraid of Gon when he just returned with him from that trip. The guy asks the girl to slow down a little because he is the only one who discovered some rocks. Jin says that the stone in this place is very similar to granite. Jin applies the surface exploration skill. He understands that there is something in this place. He orders the golem to dig up the place. The servant digs up the rock in one motion, and the girl admires it. Jin thinks there is magnetic ore mixed with white mica in this place. Chalcopyrite is also available. He even found a magic crystal of the earth. Hannah asks if the guy found what he was looking for. He agrees and says that he has found many different things. After that, Jin ordered the golem to bring everything he needed. He understands that first of all, they need to be repaired and then improved. If all the windows in the village are made of white mica, then it turns out that it lets in light. Now another golem has appeared, and Jin has named it a gene. When the material was finished, the guy went back to the Mountain of Death to collect them again, and he still has to make some carts for the village. The guy was still thinking about how they could be improved. Today he needs to collect materials again. Suddenly, he is distracted by Rock, who says that going to dangerous places is a careless act. Because of this, Robe decided to accompany the guy. Jin says he was going to this valley to get materials. Rock notices that the guy is very busy right now and asks if the guy gets enough sleep at all. Jin agrees. The man notices that his lies are obvious. Rock says that the guy needs to be on his guard because they can be hit at any moment. He understands the guy's situation, but asks not to take so much on himself. Jin understands that the man is worried about him, but he cannot be calm when he does not know how to solve the problem. After all, very little time will come, and then he will return to his village. The man assumes that the guy will continue to help everyone. After all, if an attack by me happens, he doesn't think it will be the same way. Jin realizes that if he hadn't thought of converting a water attack into a weapon back then, he would have witnessed how many people would have been deprived of their lives. If that happened, Jin couldn't imagine how he would feel. The man says with a smile that if something had happened to her, he would have been very sad too. Rock says that at that moment only Jin and Lithium could fight. The man understands that if he were in the guy's place, he definitely wouldn't be able to win. The man says that he has Maria and Cammy. He explains that others also have reasons to live. He tells the guy that no one wants to end their lives. Rock notices that somehow Jin always finds a solution to any situation, so he can be proud of himself. After all, he does things that ordinary people cannot do. The guy understands everything. The man asks why one of Gon's arms is not working. Suddenly, the golem comes up to Jin and says that one of his arms is broken. The fingers begin to break apart and fall to the ground. The guy suggests that this is because the golem would always be busy with hard work. Jin wonders where he can find the same durable materials now. It seems to the man that he has seen adamantite ore somewhere. The man explains that this is the most durable material in the world. Even if you find it, you do not need to hope that you will not be able to work with it. It is also rare that it is difficult to find it, even in the capital. Where is the country that such a rare material is by chance in the mountain of death, not far from them? Rock says that finding this material is a great success. He suggests moving this treasure to the village first. The man assumed that there were no such urgent matters that he would not dig up something solid. And then the guy did everything with the help of his skill. The man did not believe that he hoped so much to break through metal even more firmly in the world. Jin didn't even make a couple of movements as he immediately collapsed. Rock says the guy is exhausted. It's time for him to rest. Rock reminds the guy of home so that he doesn't have to take on so much responsibility. Jin needs to take care of his health. Jin is sleeping in her room, and suddenly Hannah comes to him. She jumps on his bed and greets him joyfully. The guy opens the window to let in sunlight into the room. Grandma and Hannah were already sitting at the table. The three of them were having a nice conversation. All this time, the guy slept a lot and ate well. Now it's time for him to get back to his job. He also needs to work on transportation. The cart doesn't fit, so you need something more solid. Now he can use blue copper for the frame. Jin wants to make the whole skeleton out of adamantite. The guy comes to this decision because it will be a big problem if the inner frame breaks. He then decides to use a kwachu to tie everything together. He will also add a mana generator, an ether converter, and a controlled heart. His predecessor's knowledge is incredible. She could convey the structure of the movements of four-legged creatures. She achieved this without the help of any devices. Jin understands that he should use it more often, then he can help anyone. Hannah decided to visit Jin. The girl noticed a new development. The guy made a toy horse for her. It should be in perfect working condition now. The girl climbed on the horse. The guy interrupted her, and Hannah looked at him pityingly. The guy explained that he wanted to finish her testing first. Hannah hugged the horse and thanked the guy. She promises Jin to use the toy carefully. The guy bends down and asks what name the girl would give her toy. Hannah says she will name her horse Minto. Jin programmed that Hannah would now be the owner of this horse. The girl asks if it's really a doll. The guy says that this doll looks like golems and can move on its own. Jin explains that the handle on the right is an accelerator. If the girl squeezes it, she can go. If Hannah wants to turn to the side, then you need to control the handles in the right direction. If Hannah wants to stop, she will need to lower the handle. It'll be weird at first, but then she'll get used to it. An hour later, Hannah was already riding her new toy with might and main. Jin did not expect the girl to show such speed on the toy. The guy thinks she could drive slower. The girl waved her hand after her and said that she was going to show everyone a new toy. Jin exhales. He is happy with the work he has done. He says how many toys he needs to make if he wants all children to have them. At this time, Rook went hunting with his friend. He asks his friend if he is hunting deer again. That guy confirms and says that the gene helps him. Suddenly, Hannah appeared in front of the men on her new toy. Rock is surprised and asks why the girl is here. He is interested in which device the girl is riding on. Hannah explains that this is her Golem horse, whose name is Minto. The girl explains that the horse looks like golems. Rock believes that Jin has invented something strange again. He remembers that they have deer meat, and they can have a feast. The man asks what the guy is doing now. The girl suggests that he is creating new horses. The man decided not to distract the guy from the lesson. He asked the guys to stand and wait for him on the spot for a while. After all, when he and his friends return after hunting, they will cook food together. At this time, Jin was making an invention for his forge. He invented another horse. It was already dark outside. He's very hungry and noticed that his condition is returning again. He comes out of the forge and hears a delicious aroma. As it turned out, all the villagers gathered in the courtyard to taste the meat from the hunt. The men cheerfully called the guy. Grandma came up behind the guy and said that everyone had gathered to thank the guy for all his inventions. But then a drunken Barbara throws herself on his shoulders and asks the guy's opinion about this party. The village head says that anyone who always tries to do everything as best as possible deserves support. Grandma hands the guy a plate of food and asks him to help himself. Everyone wants their inventor to get some rest. All the villagers recognize him as part of their extended family. The man is on the hunt again. One of them orders to bypass the herd of the line and not allow them to approach the village. Men don't understand how it all happened. Rock asks Jan not to worry so much. He urges everyone to listen to his commands because they are not on the hunt. They take a sharp turn on the new horses that Jin invented. The guy notices that the man expertly controls the horses. He believes that you can quickly get used to them. Rock says the guy made the controls very simple. Rock says that recently, while hunting for a deer root, he noticed that many herds of deer were fleeing from the mountains. Jin understands that there must be some reason for this. Rock suggests that they can no longer find food in the forest, or they are being attacked by wild bears or wolves. Jin suggests that they might raid their villages as well, and if the bears and wolves get to the village, it will be a big problem for them. Jan explains that animals rarely reach the village. He had heard somewhere that this had happened once. The men asked Jan to stay and guard the place. He wanted to object, but his friends reproached him for this. The guy came home. He asks his grandmother about mountain wolves. The woman explains that if this is really the case, then they have big problems. The woman says that she is once in a video of these wolves. They came face to face with the pack. She remembers how scared she was then because she was still a child. Her father had said at the time that there were many wolves in the pack. The guy understands that this happens very rarely, and it cannot be said that such a thing is absolutely impossible. Grandma says that since they are quite circumspect, wild animals break into the village very rarely. Night has fallen, and the guy is already lying in his bed. He understands that he needs to make some more preparations, but now he wants to leave everything for tomorrow. He falls asleep. Suddenly all the villagers are woken up by sharp noises. Hannah immediately started crying and asked her grandmother what was going on. The woman began to calm her down. A guy came into the room and asked if they were okay. Hannah, seeing the guy, immediately rushed into his arms. Jean wondered what was going on. The house was shaking so much that he thought it might be an earthquake. All the residents went outside. A huge glow appeared from the side of the mountain. All the residents were surprised. They were sure that the mountain was glowing. Jin wondered what could have happened here. Hannah tearfully asks the guy what they should do now. She notices that the guy is also seriously scared. She looks at Jin worriedly, and he tells her to go back and stay inside the village. The guy himself called the golems and set off towards the mountain. Rock stood next to Hannah. He understands that nothing good is happening there, and he doesn't know what Jin is going to do, but he is sure that the villagers will help him. Barbara walked up to the guy and pulled on his clothes. She asks where he's going to go in his pajamas. Jean had to change his clothes. He asks the villagers for help. He decides to build a shelter just in case. All the residents agreed and asked to trust them. Hannah was also included in the case. Jean said with a smile that all the kids had better go to bed now. Hannah was not happy with the idea. Half of the men from the village will go with Jin. The rest will stay to gain strength. And Jean also instructed me to make a late snack. Everyone started doing business. Jin tells Rock that if they keep this up, they'll be done with the foundation by dawn. The man notices that the guy needs to take a break. Rock says he would like to get some rest, because their work shift is coming to an end. He notices that at a time like this, the golem comes in handy more than ever, because he works tirelessly. Jin asks to pay attention to the golem's hands, which are beginning to collapse. Everyone needs to rest according to the daily routine. Jin explains that instead of fatigue, the golem loses its magical power. Everyone needs a little bit of care. Rock understands that they are talking about a child. Jin agrees if it's easier for a man to understand the situation that way. The guy had a little snack and went to rest. He thinks he'll sleep until noon. In his dream, he had a bright outline of eyes on a dark background. He was so scared that he got out of bed screaming. He wondered what had just happened. Hannah passed by and asked how Jin was feeling. The guy said that everything was fine. Jin asks how long he slept. The girl explained that it was almost evening. Hannah turns to Jin. She asks me not to leave. Jin explains that the shelter has not been built yet and he still needs to work. The girl lowers her head and explains that this is not what she is talking about. Anna explains that last night when that ray was shining, she looked into his eyes and felt that this ray could take Jin away forever. Tears come to her eyes and she can't keep talking anymore. The guy calms her down and says that everything is fine. He promises Hannah that he won't go anywhere. The guy explains that the village is almost like a home for him, so if he wants to go home, he will have to go to this village. He rubs the girl's head and laughs. Hannah asks if the guy is telling the truth. He agrees, and then the girl asks for a promise in this. Rock and Jin go downstairs. The work is in full swing. Jin realizes that it all looks good, and when all the people come, there will still be quite a lot of space left. The guy understands that there is no reason to worry, but then the golems come up and say that there is danger. Jan approaches Rock and says that mountain wolves have appeared in the village. Rock asked if the wolves were approaching the village. Yan said he wouldn't have screamed if it was really like that. Jin assumes that the entire pack has been defeated. They went to the place and saw this terrible picture. Jean covered her mouth with her hand in horror. Jan began to explain that it had 2 horns and glowing eyes. Rock believes that a friend is describing the hecaton hairs, who were fused. Suddenly, their conversation is interrupted by mountain wolves, who suddenly came out of the bushes. Rot believes that these are the survivors of the pack. There were only a few left, and Jin assigned them to the golems. The golems dealt with the wolves in no time, but one managed to break through to the humans. Jin prepared to use a water attack, but the wolf was immediately thrown aside with unimaginable force by a kick. Everyone is wondering who it could be. The creature fits John's description perfectly. Suddenly, the eyes of an unknown creature fade away. The doll takes on its former appearance, because it has finally found its father. She's extremely happy to see him. The doll threw herself into Jin's arms so hard that they crashed into a rock with a small explosion. She apologizes for using too much force. Jin thanks the doll for saving him from the wolf. He notices how far the doll has gone to find him. Jin is glad that the reboot was successful. The girl apologizes for being late. Rock interrupts them and asks why the girl is calling Jin daddy. At that moment, when the men found out that Jin was already a father, there was an awkward silence. The men tried to understand what was happening because they had never heard that Jin was married. The guy explains that this is not the point at all. The men came to the conclusion that it doesn't matter now, since they have practically no strength left to resist the mountain wolves, a dangerous creature of the northern mountain. Jin explains to the girl that there is something on the North Mountain that has powerful magical powers, because last day the whole mountain was glowing. The doll understands what is being said, and says that she used the explosion to defeat a monster similar to the hecaton hairs. The men were surprised that the girl had destroyed it alone. From the very beginning of the conversation, Jan does not understand what everyone is talking about. The man understands that now is the time to visit the elder's house and discuss everything about the mountain wolves and Jin's daughter. The guy agrees. They gathered at the elder's house. They realized that the doll was an automaton that Jin had created. The headman understands that the mountain wolves have been defeated. Legatenheiner was also destroyed thanks to the girl. Jan says she also hunted deer. Barbara bends over the girl and strokes her ears. She believes that it was difficult for her to find her father. She asks the girl for her name, and she replies that he doesn't have one. The men were not happy about this. and Barbara began to scold the guy for not being able to name his little daughter. The doll began to say that when she was broken, her father repaired her with great love, and she is ready to accept any name that is given to her. Jin wanted to escape, but Rock and Barbara immediately blocked his path. They urged the guy to name the girl with a decent name. Although the guy agreed, he's not very good at giving names. The doll turns to the guy and says that she wanted to tell him something earlier. The girl opens her backpack, which contains a device for setting up the simplest teleport gate. She urges the guy to take advantage of this to return to the lab. Jin is glad that they now have such a device. The girl agrees and says that now they can return to the laboratory. First, Jin decides where to install these gates. The guy thinks that if things get really bad, then the villagers will be able to use the gate to escape. Then it is best to install it in a built shelter. Guys, I'm almost done. Now they need to clear space in the far corner with a shelter. Jin didn't have time to say it, but the doll had already put everything away. The guys have already installed a teleportation gate. Jin realizes that only he, the doll, Gong, and Jin can use them. The doll asks if they can't go home right now, and Jin says he made some kind of promise not to leave here. Jin warns the doll that if he needs any tools, he will need to go get them. There's not much to eat there, and the guy's long stay is scary. Jin returns to the house to his grandmother and Hannah. The girl rushes into the arms of the guy. Hannah notices the girl. The doll, having introduced herself, says that she is Jin's daughter. The doll bluntly said that she came here to bring her father home. Hannah furrowed her brows and told Dom that Jin wasn't going anywhere, because he had promised her. The doll said that Jin would return home to get the necessary tools, although she thinks it would be better for him to return home than to live in this village and do all sorts of junk. The girls got into an argument, each of them claiming the best place for Jin. Hannah doesn't expect an apology from the doll. She thinks that the girl wants to take Jin for herself. The doll thought she was telling the truth. Jin couldn't calm her down in any way. He asked Hannah to listen, but the girl sat on her toy and drove away. She called Jin a liar. The doll thought Hannah was rude. Jin says that it is thanks to Hannah that he is alive in this village. The doll believes that she saved her father after all. The guy also mentioned that Hannah doesn't talk to anyone except her grandmother, and he wants to be grateful to her. The doll clarifies if the guy is doing it all just out of gratitude. Jin says it was like that in the beginning, but now it's different. Hannah, as well as all the villagers, accepted him, and he became part of their family. Jin turns to the doll and says that when someone from his family is no longer around, the person feels fear and sadness. He hopes for the doll's understanding. The doll remembers how she lost her mother. Jin goes on to explain that he also lost his parents, and when his friends were adopted, he was very lonely. He remembers that he grew up very naughty and secretive, but the moment when the teachers gave him a name remained forever in his heart. At this time, Jin is going to give the doll a name. He says at home that the Ray sound will be part of her name. As well as his name, it is taken from the 5 virtues of Confucianism. Now the doll's name is Reiko. The girl realizes that their names are taken from the same source. The guy explains that the meaning of his daughter's name is respect for other people and good manners. He wants her intentions to be pure. Jin wants to meet Hannah's grandmother. He looks far into the forest and wonders how far Hannah could have ridden them. Grandma explains that she returns almost immediately. He says that Minto is not perfect and it cannot be used over long distances. Hannah's friends and the rest of the villagers join the search. The guy is angry because he can't find Hannah. Suddenly, Gina distracts Reiko and says that something needs to be fixed in her. Jin says he doesn't have time to do this right now. Reiko remembers about the search function that needs to be fixed. Reiko says her search function is broken. If she knew where her father was, she wouldn't have wasted so much time. Jin was delighted because then they would be able to use the search function to locate the horse. He needs magic crystals. The doll brought some magic crystals with her to exchange them for something. The guy was happy about this and said that Reiko was the best. The guy is going to start right now. He needs to replace something in the doll, so he has to turn it off for a while. The guy does a lot of surgeries. Barbara notices that the guy is standing aside. He apologizes and says he's almost done. He gravely asks the girl not to ask him any questions. Barbara apologized and looked at him with concern. Barbara turned to her grandmother and said that Jean was scaring her. Masa told her not to get in the guy's way. At these moments, she remembers her husband, who was hammering nails into a board, with his eyes burning with an idea. Grandma is sure that the guy is doing everything that can help him in his search. The guy has completed the repair of the function. Now the new spell has been loaded into the doll, and it is ready to act. She starts searching for magical power nearby. After a while, the girl says that she found it. The doll received a response to the signal, similar to the magical power of her father and a response signal from the child. And she also identified the presence of a bear nearby. Barber asks if they found what's in there after all. Jin ordered Reiko to go ahead. The doll moved forward with great speed. And after a while, she already found a girl with a horse, who were already ready to be attacked by a bear. Hannah had tears in her eyes from fear. At this moment, Reiko kicks the bear's head with all her might. The animal was defeated and the girl was safe. Hannah asks why the girl came for her. Reiko explains that she came to show Hannah what her father is like. Despite the fact that Hannah called him a liar, she also caused him trouble. Hannah looks at Reiko angrily. She says Jin is amazing and she is strong, and she also has parents. Hannah came to the conclusion that the girl has a lot of things that she does not have. Reiko realizes that her father is not going anywhere. She explains to Hannah that he will only come home to pick up his things, then return to the village. Hannah asks why he won't come home. Reiko explains that it's all about keeping your promise. After all, there must be a good reason for Jin not to do this. Hannah remembers her family in Gina. Reiko admits that by the time her consciousness cleared, her father had already left. She spent a lot less time with him than Hannah did. With a smile, Reiko asks Hannah to tell her about her father on the way to the village. The girls return to the village. Hannah, of course, listened to the curses from her grandmother and asked for forgiveness. Masa apologized to the guys and the villagers. But I thanked them for the search. Everyone was surprised that Reiko had saved the girl. Reiko replies that she is called by her name and that she is Daddy's automaton. Jin told me who Reiko was. All the golems considered her their sister. After a hard day, Jin decided to take a dip in the hot springs. Finally, everything is back to normal. We can assume that Reiko and Hannah got along. Suddenly, Lithium bursts into the bathing room, shouting that there is no time to rest now. She explains to the guy that someone blamed the guy for the last golem attack. Now the army of soldiers is moving out. Count Walter is going to protect the peace in this country. The girl fell to her knees and screamed that she was sorry that one of the soldiers of the village of Taka had spread rumors that could not ignore the incident with the golem. Jin calmed the girl down and said that Lithium was not to blame for anything, and that he had forgotten to change Gon's appearance. Jin's friend said that there was nothing good about Count Walter, the feudal lord, coming to them. The girl said that listening to the words of other people is not in the manner of a count. An army is marching through the forest. The guy said that they still have a little time left until the Count's warriors get to them, and it's better if Jin disappears or hides for a while. Jin said that he would not do it, and if he ran away, it would arouse even more suspicion. If he ran away, then his life would turn into a military hide and seek. Jin said that he wants to stay in the village, and he made a promise that he has to fulfill. And there are so many things that he wants to create. Lithia said that she understood him, and suggested that they try to convince Count Walter. But just in case, he suggests hiding the golems. Jin's friends said that everything is fine and they all know that he is not a criminal, and this time it is their turn to protect him. There was no reason to worry. Reiko clenched her fist and said that if the warriors tried to harm Daddy, she would destroy the whole country. All the friends were shocked, and Lethia said that it was not very good and a girl should not say such things. An army of armed knights approached the borders of the village of Toka, and the commander on horseback ordered the army to adjust. Villagers appeared in front of the troops. The elder came up and said that since it was Count Walter, what was the purpose of his arrival today? The count was confused and asked the man if he was Elder Hippick. The count looked at Jin and said that he had heard that the criminal behind the recent attack and golems on the kingdom was in this village, and it was known that his name was Jin Nidu. The elder smiled and said that there was indeed Jin Nidu in their village, but he was definitely not the one they were looking for, because the Jin he knew is a very kind young man. The count looked at the elder and said that he understood everything and asked to bring the guy here. The elder repeated that he had previously said that Jin was not the one they needed. Count Walter shouted that the elder was annoying him and angrily drew his sword and put it to the elder's neck. The villagers were shocked and screamed in fright. Suddenly, Lithia shouted for Count Walter to stop because the elder was telling the truth. As she reported earlier, Jin Nidu stopped the golems and remade them. The Count got angry and said that since Farhate's daughter couldn't stop them, no one but a crook could. It doesn't matter if he's good or bad, because the king and the laws are inflexible. The Count shouted that the king had given him orders to bring Jin, and in other words, his orders were not discussed, after which the Count waved his sword. Lithia shouted that such words should not be spoken by a nobleman. And is it right to point your sword at civilians? The girl grabbed her sword and almost attacked the Count. Jin told her friend that if Lithium did this, the situation would get out of control, and he knew that the Count was not the kind of person to be persuaded. Jin came forward and said that he was Jin, and asked the Count to put away the sword. The Count was delighted, said that Jin was behaving gallantly, and how everything was simply resolved, after which he ordered the soldiers to grab the guy. The soldiers handcuffed Jin. Friends shouted for the Count to listen to them, that Jin is not a criminal, and he saved them from the village, and thanks to him, their village began to flourish, and it's cruel to take the guy away. The girl ran forward and shouted to let her brother go, that they could leave, but the residents will not budge and will never allow Jin to be taken away. Count Walter was furious and looked at the girl from his horse, so that the next moment he swung his spear at her. The Count almost struck when the spear and the horse turned away from the blow. Jin was furious. He was holding a piece of a spear in his hands and shouted that the Count had crossed a line that he should not have crossed, after which the guy threw off the handcuffs. Jin said that if it hadn't hurt Lithia and the villagers, he would have left with the soldiers without resistance. The guy shouted an order to Reiko. The automaton appeared in front of the Count, broke the spear in her hands, and shouted to the Count that she would destroy him. Reiko also struck at the soldiers, and they fell unconscious to the ground. The Count was shocked by what was happening when the machine continued to deal with his soldiers. The girl defeated a detachment of the Count's soldiers, who were now lying in a clearing. Reiko turned to the Count and said that now he was alone. The Count shouted what the girl was saying. He called out to the soldiers, shouting if there was anyone who was able to fight. But his soldiers were lying on the ground, not moving. The Count shouted to Lithia why she was standing aside, because she was a knight in training and had to perform her duties immediately. Lithia said the Count was right about her duties. Even though she was studying, she was still a knight. She was weak, but still a noblewoman. The girl took out her sword and shouted that she refused, because the Count was pointing the sword at anyone who would go against his opinion. The Count was furious when the girl said that he was not the example of a nobleman that she was going to follow. The Count shouted that she dared to go against her lord. Jin looked at the Count and said that he should leave because he doesn't like to be treated like a criminal. The Count shouted at Jin not to argue with him, and he would not let him just get away with it. Suddenly, Jin used the digging technique. The ground under the Count's horse began to crumble and turned into a deep pit where the Count fell. Reiko said Jin did as expected. Jin said he was used to excavating ore and asked if the soldiers were okay. The Count continued to scream. Reiko said the soldiers were fine, and Lithia said it was a relief to hear that. The Count shouted to Lithia again to make her realize that he would report everything to the capital and her family. The whole village should now prepare. Lydia said that he was aware of everything and therefore would go with the Count. The village of Kainia and the Ragwan Confederation would also participate in the testimony, and they would definitely prove Jin's innocence this time. Jin thanked the girl, but Lithia said that it was because she couldn't come to a decision faster, which is why everything went so far. And Jin told the girl not to worry about it, but the only one who needs to apologize is him. Lithia was moved by the guy's words and let out a few tears when Jin said he was completely relying on her to resolve this misunderstanding. Hannah ran up to Jin and hugged him, after which she said she didn't want him to leave. Jin apologized to the girl and said that he seemed to be a stranger in this country. Hannah shouted that she would go with him, but Jin asked if she was ready to leave Martha. Jin asked Hannah not to worry, and he would be fine. Jin looked at his friends and said that he'd gained a lot here, and he would cope with everything. As soon as the day comes when he can return to this country, they see each other again. Jin activated the magical movement mechanism when Reiko asked if it would be better for them if they sent Gon first. Jin agreed and said they would be the last to leave. The magic device lit up when Jin told Reiko to destroy the entrance to the secret room. The machine asked what it needed to hide the location. Jin said that Hannah has a well-developed intuition, and the girl will be able to find this room with the help of Minto. Riko agreed and said that it could happen more likely. Jin said that Roland would most likely ask to sell this room to him, and wondered if Eric and Barbara were doing well. Jin said that Erica was unlikely to be able to fix the mechanical horse and rock the others too, and there might be problems with the furnace. Jin asked if he really needed to destroy the entrance. The guy got angry from his thoughts and shouted for Reiko to destroy him. The automaton grabbed the spear and smashed the stone wall into the room. After a while, the squad arrived in the capital of the Clan Kingdom and found themselves at a reception in the royal hall. The king was angry and shouted at the count that he was a fool and what he had done, who allowed the residents to be treated like criminals. Count Walter and Lily knelt before the king and were terrified. The count tried to say something, but the king said that all he asked was to bring them to him, and how dare the count turn it all into such a misunderstanding. The king said he was glad that none of the soldiers were injured. Otherwise, the guy became a real criminal. Now he can no longer ask Jin to serve the kingdom. The count and Lithia are shocked by the king's words. The king said that he didn't mind using Jin's talents, and that it shouldn't be a surprise to them if they saw his capabilities. Lydia said that Lord Fairhate became friends with Jin Nidu. The count was angry that it was true. The king asked if she could bring Jin to him. Letitia said that Jin had not informed her or the villagers of Kaina of his location, and she had absolutely no idea where he was now. The king said that the next time she saw Jin, she passed on the news that the king wanted him to serve the kingdom, and would give him the title of Royal Master of Magic Crafting. Lithia asked if that meant Jin would become an aristocrat. She shouted for the king to rely on her, because she intended to convey his words exactly. The king smiled and said he was counting on her. The king said that about what happened in Kaina village. He is ready to forget the elders' behavior towards the count. And although they could not inform him this time, the next time she meets a talented person, she should send him a report. The king and the count were left alone, and the man angrily asked why Walter had made such a mistake and did not understand the royal order. The count said that the golems that suddenly appeared on them were causing damage to their country, and they needed to be brought under control. The count said that he really was not guided by any evidence, and this was a mistake that he made because of his arrogance, although he does not think that Jin has been cleared of all suspicion. The count said that the girl next to Jin is something that looks like a girl. In fact, more powerful than any golem, like Jin Nidu, but to whom she obeys both of them, cannot be called human. The king said that Jin is a criminal or maybe a fool. There is no difference. The count was surprised by the king's words, but the king said that compared to the benefits that Jin brings, the rest of the little things, the pump in the oven, with them, the daily life of the inhabitants of the kingdom would improve with these technologies. The king said that all he needed was Jin's power. If he could get it by giving it the title of an aristocrat, then it would be an easy victory. But the problem was whether Jin would agree to it. Lithia returned to Kaina village and told the news. Friends asked that all suspicions were now cleared of Jin. Lithia agreed and asked where Jin had gone. Lithia came to the workshop and shouted to see if Hannah was okay. The girl was surprised and said that everything was fine and she just fell asleep here when she was looking for something. Lithia said she realized that Hannah was worried about Gina and was surprised that the girl wasn't worried because Lithia herself was feeling anxious. Hannah said that Jean would come back one day because his half-made inventions and mountains of unused materials were here, and she couldn't fix anything herself. Hannah stroked the horse toy and shouted that there were a lot of things that her brother hadn't finished, and he told her that they would meet again. Jin returned to his lab but was sad. The guy thought it was great that he was back in his lab, but there was absolutely nothing here. Jin and Reiko were looking at the landscape from the balcony of the laboratory, and the girl said that only the laboratory had been located on the island for thousands of years. Jin said he had no idea that the laboratory was on the island. Jin asked that there were no people on the island at all. Riko said that he was the only one here. Jin thought it would be good to return to Kaina village. Riko said they couldn't come back yet, and Jin asked her not to read his mind. Reiko went up to the robot and said why focus on people if they have a lot of golems. Jin said that he remembered about the broken golems in the lab and called Reiko to go and check them out. The comrades came to the warehouse, and Jin said that there was more dust here than on their last visit. Reiko said that no one had been in the lab for 5 months since she went looking for Jin. The comrades came to the broken golem, and Jin said that the research laboratory could not be so huge, and there should have been more people here before. Riko said that only her mom used this lab. Jin started examining the golem and asked if the master had done it herself and if she was comfortable here. Riko said she didn't know why, but Mom lived on her own without any problems. Jim looked up at the high ceiling and wondered what thoughts Andriana Barber-Jajidi had when she was building this place to live alone. Jin said he had the right to leave this place. Riko agreed with him. Jin set to work on the plan and thought that a veil of secrecy had been lifted over their plan for the further development of the laboratory. It was decided to improve and put into operation the developments of the former master, which had not been completed. Jin examined the products and thought that their provisions from the village of Kaino were beginning to run out. The plan included the development of nearby territories, and it would be great to become self-sufficient. Jin was examining the golems and thought that in order for his plan to have enough magical powers, he decided to fix the golems first. Jin remembered how Reiko had examined the new golems and started naming them. The guy said they were maids, not idols, but resigned himself and told them to do as they liked. Reiko went to the workbench and asked what was on it. Jin said that he decided to create a golem that could explore the island from the sky. The girl was surprised and clarified how from the sky. Jin said about creating a golem and said that from a height it was easier to find out all the geographical features, and if they wanted to explore the island, they needed a map, so he used light silver for the external and internal mechanisms. Jin said that he had programmed the autopilot and the ability to insert images into the magic crystal, and later he would be able to extract these images. The comrades came to the hill, and Reiko launched the aircraft into the sky. Jin wondered if the machine would be powered by Reiko's power. The device took off over the island and began to plan for Earth. His comrades looked after him, and Jin said that he had made airplanes before, but he was glad that it took off. Reiko was delighted that the device was flying. The plane landed and Reiko ran up to him. Jin said that usually a model airplane flies when it is launched into the sky, but he thought it would be good if the plane flew by itself using Reiko's power. Reiko grabbed and lifted the plane when Jin said that now the device can only plan, so he will call it the gliding golem and someday make a propeller for it. Suddenly, one of the maids came running. Reiko asked what was the matter, and the golem said that she was here on the issue of food for the master. Golem pre-led Jin into the room, and the guy asked what they have found and if it was edible. Golem said that they noticed things that looked like fruits and nuts, then showed the guy the harvest and asked if it was edible. Jin took the fruits and said they were oranges, peaches, and apples, which are always safe. Reiko looked at the fruit doubtfully. Jin asked if they were oranges and peaches, but Reiko said she had never seen anything like this before. Jin looked at the fruit with fright and thought that he'd almost forgotten that he was in another world, and even if the fruits looked similar, it did not mean that they were the same fruit. The maid said that they were golems and did not need such food. Reiko said that even if they ate it, they wouldn't be able to tell if it was poisonous, because the fruit wouldn't have any effect on them. Jin broke one fruit and said that the probability was 50-50, and he should try one, after which he took a bite of the fruit. Reiko was scared for the master and screamed, but Jin said it was delicious and it was an orange. Reiko asked if everything was okay, but Jin said it tasted amazing. The guy laughed and said that the whole interest was in how he would feel for the next few hours. Reiko told the master not to experiment with his body anymore. The maid came with a book and said that she had cleaned the archive and found a reference book on plants. But Jin wondered why such a reference book would not be here. And now they have solved the food problem. After a while, the plan continued to be implemented, and Jin thought about how they cleared the walls of the laboratory from willow branches, and as a result, the laboratory began to look cleaner. Jin spent time in the workshop and thought that in parallel with his work he was engaged in mass production of golems, and the laboratory began to take on a characteristic appearance. Jin walked down the corridor and thought that the number of golems was increasing every day, and it was interesting that the last master would think about it, because she lived on this island alone. Jin looked around and thought that this building was strange in layout, with gloomy halls and such confusing rooms that it was impossible to navigate without a map and alone. Not to mention that she had research and experiments behind her. The comrades went out on the balcony, and Jin said that he had gone to this island so that he would not be exploited as a master of magic crafting. And it was a great idea to conduct research in this laboratory regardless of anyone. Jin looked at the island and said that now he wonders if he wants to be with other people, study here with them, and create even more things with them. Reiko asked why the master thought that way. Jin said that it is very beautiful here. There is a sea, mountains, and a sky full of stars, and you can see a lot of things here. Jin said that if he had created this building, he would have built it in a more convenient location, which means it was built for someone, that for someone who will come here someday and he wants to believe that they will have similar points of view. Jin conceived that the one who comes will be pure in his thoughts and will want to be surrounded by beautiful things and they will have common ideals. Reiko asked the master what it was like. Jin conceived and said that it looked like the island of Horai, where the immortals live. Reiko said it's okay if the immortals are. The girl said that for her mother and father are creatures like gods, and others consider the masters of magic crafting to be wise men. The girl said that she was confident that the island of Korai was here and it was not for anyone else. It was for her dad. The girl turned around and ran to the laboratory and shouted that she would tell everyone that their island had a name. Jin tried to stop the girl, but then he thought that he and the master were ordinary people. But then I realized that he was deceiving himself. After a while, Jin began to get angry and shouted that he was already sick of it, because he only gets fruits for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Reiko was scared and anxiously asked the master not to say that he was sick of something. Jin said that he was tired of eating fruits every day and was saddened by their sweetness and crunch. And Reiko realized that the guy meant a special dish. Jin remembered how Martha cooked the food and said that he would like to eat Martha's roast with roast venison. But more than that, he would like to eat rice now. Reiko asked if the guy wanted something new. He could eat an earth spider. Jin said that even if it turned out to be edible, he would still refuse, and asked if these spiders feed on air. A maid appeared and read from the handbook that earth spiders absorb ether, and this can in some sense really be considered as feeding on air. The maid pointed at the golem and said that she could plow the land, but she had no seeds and would not be able to do it. Jin said that they live near the ocean, and they will be able to get fish and salt, but he also wanted other products, so he needs to go and buy the necessary things. The maid said that it was better for them to go to the blend. The directory says that there is a real epicenter of trade. And Jin told Aqua that this information is 1,000 years old. Reiko said that she was in Blueland before she started looking for Jin, although she doubts that this is the same place as 1,000 years ago. But even now it's nice, and there are a lot of stalls. Jin said that they would go there, and then shouted to Reiko to get ready. The guy looked at the other golems and told them to keep exploring the island. The companions came to the magic teleporter, and Jin said that this was their first trip, not counting the village of Kaina and its surroundings. Reiko was delighted and said that if she was with Dad, then any trip would be a joy. Jin touched the magic sphere and entered the coordinates for teleportation, after which O gave commands for the teleportation gate to activate and the room to light up. Some time later, on the Blueland shopping street, an unknown man turned to a screaming girl and asked if she was having a bad day. The girl shouted at the man to shut up. The girl placed her goods on the table and said they looked great. Today she will definitely sell everything. It's time to make money. The girl screamed that the inventions of the best master of magic crafting of their Blueland were presented on her table. The comrades passed by the girl when she shouted, "Why not buy something?" and advised them to buy their inventions for their little sister. The girl held out the jewelry and said that it was a bracelet with a magic lamp. When it was dark, it could be lit, and this was the latest development, which was very cute. Jin took the jewelry and asked if there was not enough light in it, when Reiko confirmed his words and said that it was not very bright. The girl got angry and shouted that it was very difficult to do something in such a small thing and they should know it. Jin twirled the jewelry in his hands and said that it was tasteless, accidentally broke something and there was a crunch. The girl was shocked by his behavior. The girl screamed and asked the guy what he had just said. Jin tried to apologize and began to justify that he did not mean it. The girl shouted at the guy and asked what he wanted to say. Reiko said that you shouldn't be so angry. If you look closely, then the thing is cute and pretty well made for an amateur. The girl was furious and shouted that she was not an amateur and was studying with the famous Professor Glutia Hampton. Reiko asked who he was, and Jin put his hand over her mouth, telling her not to say the first thing that came to her mind. The girl shouted that she would not forgive them for calling her an amateur and grabbed her wand, after which she swung at her comrades and shouted for them to apologize. The girl put the wand to her companions, but Reiko stretched out her hand and grabbed it, which caused the wand to collapse under her fingers. The girl was shocked and asked how she did it with a paralyzing rod. Reiko looked at the girl threateningly and asked what else she wanted to do with her wand and with whom. The girl screamed in fright. The girl sat on the ground and tearfully asked her parents for forgiveness for the fact that they had placed high hopes on her that she would be a master of magic crafting. overworked at work to pay for her education, then fell ill and died. A crowd gathered around the girl's table when the girl said that now a couple of foreigners were making fun of her. There was talk in the crowd that part of the product was broken. An unknown guy had done something, and the girl was crying. A merchant appeared in the crowd and shouted at Jin that if they like to have quarrels, then it's better to get out of this place. Reiko tried to apologize to the man. Jin approached the girl and apologized to her for what had happened and offered to step aside and discuss compensation for the goods, including the paralyzing rod. The girl agreed, and they went into the alley. Jin apologized again for the incident, and the girl said she also apologized for pointing a dangerous thing at them. The girl said that the wand was quite valuable, and Jin said he would make up for it. But he didn't have the money and offered to fix the wand. The girl said that this is not the kind of thing that you can just take and fix. Even she had to buy it because she couldn't make it. Suddenly, Jin pulled a rod wrapped in a ribbon. Jin said that since the wand was made of wood, he could not return it to its former shape, but he increased the electrical conductivity and mana consumption decreased, and he also tweaked the magic formula. The comrades started to leave, and Jin said that he apologized again. The girl shouted for them to wait. She asked if he was a master of magic crafting. Jin agreed, and the girl understood why he called her things tasteless. The girl shouted that they could earn extra money together. Reiko said they didn't need it, and Jin had to separate the girls because the saleswoman was screaming for him to help her. The guy shouted that he had come here for seeds and food. The girl shouted that she would take him to her store and they would split the profits in half. Because no matter what, she had to earn money, and as a master of magic crafting, she endured any humiliation. The girl sat down on the ground and said it was for her parents' sake, then screamed that it was for her pride, life, luxury, and fame. Reiko said it was disgusting and she only saw the love of profit. Jin said that he agreed to give her a couple of tips, ate, and she would take him to the store. The girl introduced herself as Bina and agreed to the deal. Jin and Reiko also introduced themselves. Bina brought her friends into the building, and Jin asked if this was really her store. The girl said that everything was of excellent quality, despite the fact that she did not have a lot of money. Jin looked at the product shelves when Reiko said that it was much better here than in the village of Kaina, because at least there were tools. Jin asked me not to say such things. Bina asked what they were discussing, but Jin changed the subject and asked how she planned to earn extra money. The girls shouted that everything was simple, and they needed to do great things. The girl said that if Jin would give her a couple of tips, then couldn't she improve her finished products and get more money? Jin took the product from the table and said that he had already seen her work and they were all unfinished, because the lamps gave little light and she was too fixated on the appearance of the product. But the technical component leaves much to be desired. The guy activated the product and said that she had made a protective barrier against damage, but the power of the magic stone was not enough to fully protect it. After that, Jin hit the barrier with a hammer. Bina said that she could have used a larger magical stone, but even if she had succeeded, no one would have bought this thing because of the high price. Jin took out a magic tablet and said that this was not the problem, but the important thing was how she wrote the magic formula, and because of it, she lost half of her effectiveness. Because of the formula, her products were technically weak. Bina began to write down all the guy's advice when Jin said that there was an even more significant problem, namely the purpose of use and the unique features of the product. Jin said that, for example, a lamp can be used indoors and outdoors, as well as to illuminate what is in front. Depending on this character, the strength of the required light varies, and the mana consumption will be different. Bina wrote down the tips, and Jin said that you need to know what you are making the product for, who may need it, and what necessary properties you need to put in it. Bina said that she did not understand anything and the comrades were shocked. The girl shouted that Professor Hampton had not taught her all this. Riko asked who it was again while Jin was telling himself to breathe slowly and calm down. Jin said to explain everything in order about all the characteristics and how to improve the magic formulas. Bina was writing everything down in a notebook when the girl started to get angry that there was too much to remember. Jin said that this is just a small part and Bina should just start applying it and reread the notes more often. The girl asked to stop and said that it was getting late and she needed to leave for a while to feed her brother and sister. Bina asked if Jin would be willing to join their humble meal, but she would not be able to cook something grand. The guy remembered the mountain of fruits and agreed to the invitation. After a while, the comrades came to the house and Bina shouted that she was back. 2 children came up to the girl, Bina, and stroked Rand and Nana's hair. The children asked what kind of people came with her, and Bina said that they were Jin and Reiko, friends who would work with her. The children sat down next to the guy on the floor and got to know him. Jin examined the children and noticed that something was wrong with them because there were red spots and bleeding gums. Jin assumed they had scurvy. Bina suddenly shouted that he knew about their illness. The guy said that he was not an expert and could not say. It just looked like the symptoms of a disease that he was familiar with. Bina said it was true and she wanted to take them to a healer, but she didn't have any money. So she decided to feed them something nutritious. But then the girl assured that she would earn money and the healer would cure them, after which she left to cook dinner. Jin told her to bring more, and the machine was delighted, saying that after all that had happened, she was glad that Jin liked fruits. Jin looked at the children and said he wasn't the only one who would eat them. Reiko ran out of the room and shouted that she would bring more fruit. Bina asked where Reiko had gone, but Jin asked that dinner would be ready soon. Jin said that he asked her to do something, but Bina got angry and shouted that it was already dark and no matter how strong Reiko was, because it was dangerous for a girl to walk alone. Jin said he was okay because Reiko was a robot. It was time for dinner, and Jin was delighted. Bina said he was exaggerating the quality of the vegetable soup, but the guy said he hadn't eaten a hot meal in a very long time. Jin looked at the vegetables and asked what it was that they usually ate vegetables raw. Bina said it was impossible because the vegetables were of terrible quality, so they always boiled them. Jin thought that he understood correctly about scurvy, which is because it is difficult to get enough vitamin C from vegetable soup and eat fruits better. Suddenly, Reiko appeared in the doorway. The guy was glad to see her back. She dumped a huge mountain of fruit on the dining table. Reiko said she hadn't brought too much fruit, but Jin thought that they probably wouldn't eat it. Bina and the children were shocked, and the girl asked what it was. Jin said it was fruit, but the girl shouted in surprise that it was a peach. The children took the fruit, and Bina shouted that if you don't have money, you need to sell peaches, because this is an elite product called royal fruit, and even the nobles can't afford to eat it in such quantities. Jin was surprised that this fruit was so valuable, and said that then they could just all eat it together, because even if they sold it, there would still not be enough money for a doctor. Reiko cut the fruit into slices, and the children began to taste them, saying with delight that it was very tasty and sweet. Bina happily shouted that she saw more apples and oranges and told her comrades to try them too. Jin agreed and took a piece of fruit. The children shouted in delight that it was all delicious, and Bina said she would not let Jin take the fruit. After a while, Bina started training Jin's tips and tried to create a new product using the shaping technique. The material began to take shape under the influence of magic, but eventually collapsed. The girl shouted that it was so tiring, but the guy told her to calm down and focus, otherwise she wouldn't sell anything if she wasn't accurate. Jin asked what she wanted to create. Bina said that she does not yet know what everyone needs and what everyone wants. If you ask what she wants, the answer comes quickly. The guy said it's not a good idea to create what you need. Bina was inspired and said that, for example, a purse that would give her countless amounts of money, or a staff that could cure anything. Jin told her to focus on what she could do. Bina said she was just joking. The girl took the apples and said that to begin with, you can come up with a tool that could do something with them. Otherwise, after 3 days, they will spoil and become inedible. Jin said that saving food is a good idea. Bina began to reason that the problem was how to do it. The fruits would definitely be preserved if they were dried or salted. Smoking was also a suitable option. But she is not sure about drying peaches. Most likely their taste will change. Jin looked at the girl and said that if it was a snowy country, they could just bury it in the snow. The girl thought about the fact that the guy offered to cool the food. The girl created a piece of ice in her hand and said that if you constantly use ice magic, the consumption will be huge. There is a warm region and the ice will melt, so a small stone will not work. Jin said that they don't have to freeze the food, and if the ice is isolated, it won't melt, because the cold air will stay from below and everything should work fine. Bina took a notebook and said that if they put water in it and freeze it at times, wood will be suitable for the case. But inside the magic circuit, it is better to use copper and then the magic formula will work. And the refrigerator appeared. Bina shouted in delight that not everything worked out, and Jin said that if you think about it, then Bina will be able to make a refrigerator. The girl said that she would have to borrow Jin's magic stone. The girl took the stone, and the guy said that everything was fine, and she would be able to return it as soon as she sold the product. Suddenly, Reiko appeared in the room. She apologized for interrupting the celebration, but asked at what price they were going to sell the new instrument. Bina said she would offer the most affordable price. But suddenly the girl was horrified and Jin asked what happened, but the girl said that she would not be able to sell the tool because of the price of the stone that she borrowed from Jin. Reiko said that she checked the prices yesterday and it looks like even the smallest stone will be worth 1,000 tor. Jin thought that according to the information from Roland, tor is about 10 yen, which means 1,000 tor is 10,000 yen. The guy remembered how Rolanda said that a loaf of bread is 10 tor. Jin looked at the big stone and realized in a panic that they would not be able to sell the tool. Bina was upset and shouted that she had already created the instrument. The children looked at the refrigerator in surprise, and Jin said that for now Bina could use it herself, and a buyer could be found later. But instead we needed other ideas. It was time for lunch, and Jin said that we need to come up with something convenient for ordinary people, cheap and fast to produce. The guy was eating food when he suddenly froze and asked Bean if he'd eaten the corn. The girl laughed and said she was tough because she bought the cheapest one on the market today. The guy looked at the plate and thought about the shape of the corn, then asked if they had any more corn. Bina said she was all tough. The guy said he would borrow her pot, and the girl asked what he would do. But Jin went over to the stove with a bag of corn and began to examine it carefully. Bina shouted what he was going to do and began to worry about his pot when Jin asked Reiko for an electric stone. Jin shouted that he would later make her as many pots as she wanted, even 4, even 5. The girl nervously said that 2 would be enough for her. Everyone came up to the pot and Bina asked what it would be. Jin dropped the corn into the pot, put his hand to the pots, and used the star technique. Suddenly, explosions began to be distributed in the pot, and the girl was scared, after which she grabbed the children and screamed what had happened and what was happening. Corn balls began to appear from the pot, which filled the entire table, and Bina looked at the result with surprise. Jin shouted that it was an absolute success, but Bina screamed that it didn't look like a success. The guy handed the girl a plate with balls and asked her to try to eat this. Jin was eating popcorn and said it was a common food in his homeland. The children sat down at the table and started eating the balls when Bina told them not to do it. But the children said it was delicious and crunchy. Jin said it's made from corn and doesn't do any harm. Bina took one ball and decided to try it. The girl was delighted and shouted that this was something that could definitely be sold because it was a cheap and fast product that they could easily make. Bina recalled a visit to the market, and Jin said that they could not use better corn. They needed it to be hard in order for the grains to burst. And you also need to buy salt, butter, and pow leaves for packaging. It's all you need for popcorn. The guy said they still need to think about other ideas. Bina said that she has an idea. They constantly need a fire to heat the room or cook. And what about a tool to create a fire? Jin agreed that it was a good idea. Bina said that this is what a bunch of firestones are needed for, and they will have to buy a lot as startup capital. Jin took out a small bag from his pocket where there were stones and handed it to Bina, saying that there were not many here, but she could use them. Bina hesitated, but Jin said that everything was fine. The girl grabbed the guy by the hand and promised that she would definitely repay the debt. Jin said he was relying on her. The girl ran into the workshop with the stones and shouted that she could already make a prototype of the tool. Reiko asked about the magic stones. Jin said that these were left over from Kana's village, and he used them in his shoulders, so everything will be fine and he knows roughly what Bina will come up with. Reiko asked if it was really okay to give them all away, because if all the tools sold out, then all the stones would be gone. Jin said he didn't fully understand what you were doing himself, but the stones were a souvenir from the village of Kaina. The guy looked out the window and said he thought the villagers would say it was so like him. There is a counter with bottles on the shopping street. Jin said that a lighter is a good name. Bina put her palms together and said that a real battle was coming and asked that the lighters be sold. Crowds of people walk along the shopping streets in search of interesting goods, when suddenly there is a noise on the street and people turn towards the counter of Jin and Bean. Customers are surprised that there are muffled explosions from popcorn on the counter and begin to whisper about what kind of sound it was. The customers came up to the counter and Bina kindly asked them if they would like to try popcorn. The girl showed a dish of popcorn and said that it was light, crunchy, and still smelled of corn. It was easy to eat, and the children would definitely like it. Bina made Reiko eat popcorn and tell her how delicious it was. Customers started saying it smelled good and asked if it was really delicious. The first customer came up to the counter, handed over 5 tours, and asked for 1 portion. Bina handed the treat to the customer, and the guy tasted some of their packaging. The rest of the people looked expectantly at the first customer as he tasted. But suddenly he began to eat popcorn with pleasure and shouted for 2 more servings to be sold to him. The other customers had also placed orders, and now a large crowd was trying the new treat and shouting that it was too tasty and crunchy. One of the customers noticed the goods from the counter and asked Jin what this lighter was doing. Jin took a lighter and said that if you press the button, a small fire appears with which you can light a bonfire. The buyer was delighted, said he would take one and paid 50 tor, after which the other buyers began asking to sell lighters to them. After a while, Bina sat down on a chair and said that she was tired, that the lighters along with the popcorn sold out quickly. It was the first time in her life that she had sold so many. Jin said it would definitely sell many. Jin said it would definitely sell. Bina remembered the customers and said that she was glad that the product was sold, but she was also pleased with the faces of the customers. Bina looked at Jin and said that now she understood what Jin was telling her, and so she thanked the guy with a smile. Jin said he was happy for her, but she'd better thank him when she can cure Nana and Rend, which is still a difficult task. Bina was delighted and said that now they can go and buy a lot of delicious food. Reiko said it wasn't wise to spend all the money on time like that, but Jin said he wanted rice. Jin was working in his workshop in the laboratory when Ryoko came and asked why he would make futons. Jin said it was for Nana and Rald. Reiko asked if he had made it from the threads of large caterpillars. Genie said yes, but I had a surplus of big spiders with them, and he made another 10 futons. Maids walked down the corridor carrying futons, and Jin said that they could be used for guests if they ever had them. Jin said that if possible, he would like to build a house because there are too many things in this laboratory that he would like to keep secret. Genie said that there is an underground mine of resources, and it is impossible for it to become known on the market, and the teacher's inventions are also in question. Genie said that if he brought someone to the lab, he would have to divide people into those who could know about it and who could not. Reiko said she understood his order and would soon build a house. Jean said that he was counting on Reiko and asked to double-check the futons and wake him up earlier so that he could go to Bina's tomorrow. The guy went into the room and said that now he would like to go to the hot springs in Kaina or to a relaxing bath. Reiko looked at the door and said that her father could rely on her. Jin came to Bina, and the girl immediately shouted that she had found a water heater and showed the guy the kettle. The girl said that she thought about how good it was to have warm water to wash or something else and came up with it. Jin examined the invention and said that it was good, and Bina was just like a craftsman. The girl was surprised and shouted that she was the crafting master. Reiko brought the futons and Bina asked if it was really them. Jin said they had extra materials and he did it for Nana and Rald. Bina touched them and said that they were very warm and she would like to have one for herself. Jin said that he had made a reserve and she could take one for herself. Bina said that she was relieved to think about Jin doing such things, and honestly, she thought Jin was only doing weird things. The guys thought about spiders and that the material from which futons are made is most likely not strange, because people in this already eat monsters, and if you count giant caterpillars for silkworms, then everything is fine. Jin said that of course he was a normal, ordinary craftsman named Jin Nidu. Bina said that he and normal are antonyms, if only because he had extra materials at home, which is no longer normal, not to mention peaches and apples. Bina said that if you look at Reiko, there is not a single crafting master. The ability to create an android in Jin is somewhat fundamental, but different from all other masters. Bina smiled and said that she had crossed the line and Jin shouldn't worry, because he probably has secrets that he can't talk about, and she's not going to find out from him. Reiko said that someone like Bean could be tactful, and the girl shouted out why she was saying such a thing. Jin thanked the girl and said that she could be told the secret. Bina screamed in shock that the teleportation gate is a legendary artifact and how Jin can be an orphan who lives on a separate island. Bina said that this explains his knowledge of crafting skills. Jin said that these fruits grew on his island. Bina said she understood why Jin was having trouble telling everything. If the teleportation gate fell into the wrong hands, it would be a disaster. Bina said she would keep his secret. She may not look serious, but she won't say a word. Jin said she was quite stubborn and looked like a stubborn person. Bina asked what it all meant, but the guy said it was a compliment. After a while, the goods came to the shopping area and put the goods on the counter. Bina shouted that it was time to trade. The girl began to show the water heater while Reiko was selling popcorn to customers. Jin managed to replenish the goods on the counter while Bina held back the crowd in front of the table. The trading day ended, and Bina said that today was crowded, and Jin confirmed that he was glad to hear it. Suddenly, a gang of robbers with daggers appeared in front of the counter. But one bandit asked if they were a glorified merchant shop, when another said it was time to give them something. Bina was shocked and scared when she asked what to give. But Jin looked at the bandits and thought about what a cliché it was. Reiko handed the package to the bandit and said it was a food sample. The bandit asked what it was. Reiko said they wanted some, so they could help themselves. The bandit got angry and shouted that they were making fun of them because they had come for money and swung his fist at the robot. Bina was afraid for the robot, but Reiko caught the bandit's fist in her palm. And the next moment, she threw the giant aside. The rest of the robbers were watching their friend's flight when they suddenly shouted that they would now deal with the little girl and prepared their sword. The bandit raised his sword to strike, but Reiko ran up and said that asking for money in return for a bad action means having bad taste. The robot gripped the blade of the sword and rolled it up, saying that they thought they would at least get some popcorn and magic tools. But instead, they preferred a bad deed. The bandit was shocked when his sword was ruined, to which the other bandits rushed to attack, causing the robot to attack them. Reiko delivered several crushing blows to the bandit's jaw, after which she jumped into the air and delivered a powerful kick. The bandits were lying in a pile on the street, and Reiko said that he thanked them for the tasting. Jin called the robot, but Reiko said she didn't kill them. The gang was sitting on the ground tied up with a rope. Jin said that since they had tied them up, what should they do next? Bina said it would be better to hand them over to the guards at the fortress. Suddenly, a man appeared in the crowd and said that he was leading them, and they didn't have to do it, because he witnessed a beautiful scene. Bina said they didn't have a farce here. The man clapped his hands and asked for forgiveness and said that although he could not help them, he was delighted with how everything went. An assistant stood next to him and said that Count Kazuma was as witty as ever. The Count said that he was interested in the rumors about popcorn and he came to try it. The assistant said that he could ask for a chance and he would just buy food for the Count. The Count said that he had heard that popcorn tastes better when it is just cooked. Reiko handed the package dutifully to the man. The Count thanked her and paid the cost of the package. After which, he tried it, and said that's why people like it. The Count handed the package to the assistant and told him to try it too, but he refused. The Count said he would take a few more packages, and asked me to wrap them up with him. The Count approached the comrades and asked if he could find out their names. The comrades introduced themselves, and the Count told the assistant to take care of the bandits and say goodbye to his comrades. Bina calmed down and Jin said that they stood up to the Count. If you think about it, he came personally to buy popcorn, which means he's a good nobleman. Bina asked if Jin really thought that, and the guy reassured her. Behind the wall, a stranger was eavesdropping on the conversation of his comrades. The comrades returned home, and Bina said that she was very tired. Jin said that meeting bandits and a nobleman seemed like a common thing. The girl said that she did not know about the nobleman, but bandits are really a common thing. Jin asked why public order on Blue Earth was so bad. Bina said there are a lot of people here, so crime is high. Bina said that the nobles who want a safe life live in the fortress, and to get inside you need a pass and something to prove your identity. But this does not concern ordinary mortals. Jin said he didn't think so, because if the Count came to them, it means that he was interested in her product, which means lighters, popcorn, and water heaters will soon spread further. Jin said that this way Bean's name would become known among the nobles, and it meant that everyone would recognize her skills as a master craftsman. The girl was delighted, but Jin told her to be careful, because fame always comes with risk. Jin recalled the events in Kana village, and said that there are always people who know you and lend a helping hand. But there are also people who only think about their own benefit. Jin said it was good when people found out about her abilities, but you have to be careful not to get into any trouble or you might get eliminated. Jin asked if Bina was listening to him, but the girl was happy with her dreams. Bina said that in her opinion, Jin should also be careful, because he is too kind to everyone. Reiko said that she agreed with this opinion. Father meddles in other people's business too easily. Bina said it was very noticeable and the guy was embarrassed. There were children sleeping on futons in the room. When Jin said that then he should stop teaching Bean, the girl shouted at him to continue doing it. I laughed at the guy that he had no choice and what would happen if the girl continued to use other people. Another trading day at the counter ended, and Bina shouted that they had done a good job today, as expected from her. Jin whispered to Reiko that he had probably overpraised her. The robot said that the girl was too self-confident. Suddenly, a guy in a suit came up to the counter and Bina was worried about his presence. The guy asked the girl if she was a being crafting master. Bina confusedly introduced herself. The guy bowed and said that he was the butler of Mr. Count Garin, and his name was Cloud. One of the servants was buying popcorn for the young master, and now the Count wants more. Cloud asked if it wasn't difficult for them, if they could teach them how to cook it. Bina got angry and started shouting that how to cook it, and they wanted too much. The butler bowed and said they would pay and asked the girl again. Bina looked at Jin with concern. The guy nodded to her, and she told the butler that they could teach them. Cloud was delighted and said he would take her to their castle right now. Bina asked Jin if it was really worth selling a recipe for making popcorn. The guy said that sooner or later, they would open it anyway, and it was better to sell it now than when they figured it out themselves. The girl agreed and said that the nobles said they had prepared a decent payment, and maybe this was a chance to ask for something more. Jin said that the girl's face was creepy when she was overcome by greed. Bina said she was joking, and her motto was, everything for people, after she asked the guy to look after Nana and Raoul while she was gone. Jin said she could rely on him, and the girl left. Bina got into a noble carriage, and the driver went from the girl's house to the Count's palace. The comrade said goodbye to the girl, and Jin said that he hoped that she would not spoil anything and needed to take care of the younger ones while they were trading. Reiko and Jin brought the children to the store to collect new inventions for the counter and shelves. So far, Reiko has prepared dinner for everyone. Reiko and Jin were standing at the counter in the store when the guy said that Bina was already late. He was a little worried and hoped that nothing terrible had happened. Reiko asked him why he thought that. Jin looked at the counter and said that lighters and popcorn were unusual, but he did not think that the nobles were interested in it. It was just more logical for ordinary people who had little food and money. The guy said that maybe their goal is to evaluate her skills in technology. Reiko said that was a good explanation. Count Kazuma appeared at the counter and said that if he were in his place, he would decide to find out the character of the girl. The man said they weren't in their usual place, so he came here, but it looks like Lady Bina isn't here. Jin said she went to Count Garin's estate. The Count thought about it and said that he was probably too late. He asked Jin if he could approach them with a business proposal. Jin was surprised that they were having a business conversation. The comrades went into another room, and the assistant said that it was awkward, and the Count laughed that it was really very awkward. Jin told them not to talk like that in front of Bina. Reiko brought pieces of fruit, and the assistant was surprised by the apple, after which he said that he needed to check for poison and took a piece of fruit. The assistant was trying the fruit when the Count said he was sorry that his man was a little paranoid. Jin said he understood him because he had a similar experience. The Count said that sometimes the assistant goes too far. Jin said he understood, but they should be grateful for that. The comrades looked at the assistant, who had eaten all the apples, and the Count asked if he had overdo it with the check. The man was sharply surprised and said that this apple tasted like this, and the Count asked if it was so tasty, after which he took a piece from the plate saying that he had never tried cooling apples. The Count went to the refrigerator, and Jin said that it was a magical device that cools everything inside. The Earl asked if Lady Bina had invented it. Jin agreed and said that with this, food could be kept fresh for longer, and if more food could be saved, they would be able to overcome hunger. But the problem is that due to the cost of materials, the invention cannot be sold in the market. The Count inspected the refrigerator when Jin said they planned to recycle it to lower the price. Ask the Count if this means that it will become publicly available. Jin said that there are many ways to happiness, so there must be a way that made everyone happy. And instead of sitting on your happiness, it's better to spread it everywhere. That's about our credo. The Count thought about it, then said that this type of thinking was simply amazing, and said whether they would allow him to buy goods. The assistant approached the Count and asked what about the water heater. The Count said they would buy him too. The Count said that the local craft masters are trying their best for the common good, and it motivates. The Count said that the phrase to sit over is happiness indirectly, but also concerns himself. The Count looked at his comrades and said that he had come here to offer them to become his personal craftsmen and crafters, but said that he'd changed his mind, because he can't involve them in something as dirty as creating tools for conflict. Jin asked in surprise about the conflict. The Count took out a scroll, after which he said that there was information in the last 6 months that one of these people had supplied golems and magical beasts to Algeria against them. The Count showed the map and said that later, after investigation, it turned out that the supplies were coming from the Celoria region. It's impossible to say for sure yet, but an invasion is probably being prepared, so all the nobles are gathering the best craftmasters. Jin was horrified when the Count said that all this was to increase his personal strength against beasts and golems, as well as against the army of Celoria. But if only this force had been used only for invasion, everything would have been fine. The Count said that some of the masters are used for internal struggle. Jin shouted that this was what Count Guarana had turned to them for. The Count said he couldn't deny it, but their job was to protect the kingdom, to train the workforce. Jin said that it could be true, and that meant Count Garen had a purpose when he attracted Bina. The Count said that most likely the goal is the same as his. Jin ordered Reiko to find Bina. The Count said that in order to enter the fortress, you need to go through certain procedures. He understands that with the power of Lady Reiko, they can skip all this, but he cannot allow them to do so. Jin tried to object, but the Count said that he would go himself, and they should let the nobility fulfill their duties. The children looked out of the room when the Earl said that he would bring Lady Bean home as soon as he could, including for the sake of the children. Jin asked the Count if he could rely on him. The Count told them to leave it to him because it was also so that he could eat chilled apples at home. The comrades were sitting at home waiting, when suddenly Reiko told her father to get out of here quickly. The guy was surprised, but the robot said that several people were heading here. Several people in black hoods had joined the squad and were heading towards Bean's house. In the center of the squad was a huge knight with a heavy sword. Jin shouted that golems were really coming to them and they were up to it too and what was going on. Reiko took up a fighting stance in front of Jin. At Count Garen's estate, Bina was taking a hot bath. The girl was delighted and said that to take a bath from them as expected from the nobles. They clearly live well. The girl decided that she needed to try harder and got out of the water. Bina went out into the hallway where she met Cloud. The guy asked if she had a good time. Bina said that the temperature was just perfect. Claudia said he was glad to hear that and thanked him for his help with the popcorn. Claudia said that the Count's children liked it very much, and Bina was delighted. The guy said he would like to talk about a popcorn machine, and if she didn't mind, they would like to buy it for 10,000 tor. Bina was shocked and asked again that it was 10,000 tor. The girl thought it was their monthly earnings. But the car was created by Jin. Count Guarana appeared in the corridor and asked why Kaluta was spending so much time buying one magic tool. Claudia apologized to the Count, but the man said that he only needed to talk to one craftsman. Suddenly, the Count said that Bina looked good, grabbed the girl by the hand, and led her down the corridor. Bina was shocked and screamed what he was doing, and she needed to get back already. Bina called the butler, but Claudia turned his back on her and said that since this was the case, the Count could have fun. Bina screamed what they were doing. They were waiting for her at home. The Count grabbed the girl by the face and asked if she wanted any trouble to happen to them. The Count grabbed the girl by the robe and shouted that he did not need noisy women, after which he pushed the girl. Bina fell on the bed. The Count came closer and told her not to scare, and he would be gentle because the night had just begun, and they would have a lot of fun. Bina screamed for the Count to move away from her, but the man laughed insistently and said that if she were his, she would get a wonderful life. Bina screamed when suddenly the door of the room opened and the butler, Cloud, ran out, who called the Count. But the man shouted for him to knock. The Count asked what had happened. The butler apologized and said that Count Kazuma had arrived and told him to bring Bean back home. The Count met Kuzum, and the guest said that he had disturbed them so late at night, but he had heard that Lady Bean was here. Kuzuma said that he went to the stable, but there was no one there, and since he had an urgent matter, he decided to come here. The Count began to shirk and pretended to be thinking about Bean, but Kuzuma said that he had heard from the guards that the girl had not left the citadel and asked if the Count wanted to say that he had left the commoner alone in the citadel. The Count said that the girl was enjoying their great bathroom and he forgot that he would be coming out soon. Kuzuma asked if this was the case and said that he would call her right now. Bina went out into the corridor of the citadel as Count Kuzuma immediately saw her and turned to the girl, telling her to go with him because her relatives were waiting. The girl burst into tears and took Count Kuzum's hand. The Count was furious and shouted that this son of an old, noble family had just entered politics, and how dare he behave so insolently with them. The Count said that Bina would become his very soon. As long as her relatives were in his hands, it would not be a problem. She was his. The Count asked Cloud if everything was going according to plan. The butler said that everything was according to plan, and it was too late for them. Everything would be ready by the time they arrived. Bina and Kuzuma were riding in a carriage, and the man said that she had been through a lot and he wanted to find her today. The girl was surprised by his words, and the Count said that he wanted her to become his personal craftsman. But he changed his mind after talking with Jean Dino. Bina asked what Jean had said. Kuzuma said that she makes tools for commoners, and instead of making someone happy, she wants to make everyone happy. The Count said he would like to buy her refrigerator because it is a wonderful invention, but he does not think it would be good if he monopolized a wonderful talent. The Count admitted that he panicked that she had gone to Count Durano's estate. The Count said that he would like her to stay on her way to do something for everyone. Bina said that even with her strength, she couldn't sell Jin's goods. The Count said that Jin would understand if he was told about it correctly. Kuzuma asked if they were good friends. Bina smiled and said that he was part of her family, so they needed to get back faster. Riko and Jin were in the house. The robot asked if they were going to get magic tools. Jin said that it was most likely so, and they still did not know for sure if they were enemies, and if it was possible, then he would like to avoid a conflict, but thinks that it is impossible. Bithamosimo. Reiko told him to run away on his own in a bad situation. Jin said that if it's an enemy that you can't defeat, then running will be useless. Jin said if they were forced to fight, then he would just believe in Reiko. A group of strangers in dark raincoats surrounded the building of the house and took up positions on the roofs of neighboring streets. One of the enemies got into the house and saw the children in the room. The stranger said that he had found them and they needed to approach him. The children took out a magic artifact and pressed it, causing a light barrier. The stranger realized who it was when Reiko suddenly appeared and shouted that they had not come here to steal, but to kidnap, which then struck at the stranger and he flew through the wall, destroying it. Reiko sighed that this house was so fragile. The robot got into a fight with several mercenaries when another one entered the room and asked what the noise was. Riko was shouting at that moment that this was a good opportunity to rebuild the house. Jin suddenly appeared behind the mercenary and threatened him with a paralyzing staff, and used the technique to dig under the enemy's feet. The mercenary fell into the pit and Jin looked at him and thought that he felt like he was the only one using this trap. Reiko dealt another blow to the mercenaries when one of the enemies said that this girl was in the report and called for the golem's case. The knight passed by the mercenaries and ran towards the robot, after which he struck a powerful blow with his spear. But Reiko managed to dodge. The robot landed on the ground, but abruptly jumped up and pushed the golem in the chest with a strong blow, which caused it to fall to the ground. Reiko grabbed the golem's sword and swung it while it was lying on the floor, after which she cut its helmet into pieces. The mercenaries were shocked, and one said that they had no choice, then took out a sword and shouted that even if he burned this place down with her. The mercenary's sword shone with fire magic, and another mercenary said that the flame was excellent and a fiery vortex formed in the room. Kuzuma and Bina ran into the room when the fiery whirlwind began. The Count shouted that they were late, and Bina was shocked. The children hid behind a protective barrier and called for their sister. But Jean stood next to them to protect them when the mercenary shouted that they would all burn. Reiko entered the fiery vortex, and Jin thought that his robot would not melt from such a small damage. On Kuzuma and Bina streets of the city, they watched the fire, and the girls screamed in horror that this was their house. Reiko struck at the mercenary inside the flame vortex, and he shouted that she was not a robot, but a monster. One mercenary shouted that he would just take hostages and waved his sword. But Jin used a magic wand, and the enemy lost his sword. Bina grabbed her staff, but Jean shouted that she could destroy all things. But the girl swung and hit the mercenary with her staff. The children ran up to their sister and shouted that they were glad that she was all right. Jin approached his friends and asked if everything was okay. Bina C admitted that she couldn't sell the popcorn machine and she's sorry. Jin said that she shouldn't feel guilty about it, and Reiko also broke their wall. That the robot began to rebuild the structure. Reiko said that this wall is thin and fragile, but Jin said that the girl needed to build a better house. Bina shouted that they were the only ones to blame for this. Reiko said that the wall should be built of bricks, and Jin suggested making it non-combustible. The girl told me where to get such expensive material. The Count laughed and said that they were talking about crafting even in such a situation. Jin said that they are magic crafters and they are the best at creating something. Jin and Bina punched their fists and were glad to be home alone. The comrades examined the hole in the wall. Bina said it was a miracle that the workshop had survived. Jin said they could rebuild the house, but they had to start somewhere. Kuzuma suggested that they could move to his estate. There is a possibility that the enemies did not surrender after the battle. Build a workshop on his territory. He has a guard. It is safe there, and they can stay under his protection until the situation calms down. Kuzuma said that it was amazing how long Count Garano had been pretending to be stupid, and he believed that the Count would say that it was caused by an attack by a golem and magical beasts. He did not think that kidnapping the nobles of his citizens would be so easy. Kuzuma said that the Count went too far and sent the golem if the kidnapping was successful. Then he would use the children to ensure that Lady Bina obeyed his orders. Bina was outraged, but Kuzuma said that the act was terrible, especially from a nobleman. But even such people are needed by the country, and this shows how terrible the current situation is. Kuzuma said they still have no evidence of a crime. Jin asked about the interrogation of the mercenaries, but Kuzuma said that his assistant was already doing it because they had a reason to keep quiet, and some had already tried to end their lives. Jin shouted why Kuzuna was telling Bina to just wait. Kuzuna said that this was the best option, but Jin got angry and shouted how they could just wait and he would go to the Count's castle right now. Kuzuma said that the Count was behaving unbecomingly for a noble, and he believed that Lady Reiko would easily destroy both the Count and his subordinates. But if the truth about the nobles came out, then the kingdom would be destroyed. Jin needs to think about the influence we have in the kingdom of Agrelia and Blue Land. Kuzuma said Jin should think about how it would affect the citizens, or Lady Bina. That's the reason he can't let him in. Jin said that it is easy to return hatred and use it as energy, but asked for time. He believes that the Count will test the medicine of the future. Bina hit Jin with a baton, and the guy asked her not to make a scary face. Bina said that if it was because of her, then she was fine and received the necessary support. Bina said that she loves this city and the kingdom, and Jin himself said that they should think about what they want to create for everyone. To begin with, she decided to create something for the people in the city. The girl said that after all she needed money, and she was ready to create a washing machine and a water purifier. Jin said it was amazing, and the girl replied that Blueland's best magic creator. Jin apologized to Kuzuma for his behavior and asked him to take care of Bina. Kuzuma made a promise and asked what about Jin Dono. Kuzuma said that they could make a workshop in the form of an extension, since he has been his assistant. Then moving would be a good idea. Reiko looked at Jin seriously and said that he called his father Bina's assistant. But the robot came up to the guy and grabbed him. The friends tried to calm the robot down, but Reiko put the guy on her shoulders and said they were coming back. The friends were looking after Reiko and Jin when the guy shouted that it was embarrassing for him, but they would get home faster this way. Jin asked Reiko to slow down and said goodbye to Bina. Bina asked what they were going to do, but then he thought that this was the last time they would see each other, and in any case, she had nothing to pay him with. After a while, Kuzuma came into the office and asked Bean how her new workshop was, and if she needed something, he would get it. The girl said she needed a golden hammer, a chain of magic crystals and jewelry, but Bina said she was just joking. Kuzuma and Bina walked through the courtyard, and the girl said that the Count was kind and treated magic crafters well. Before that, she had seen only 2 such people, and the Count knew them. Kuzuma said he recognized her when she became popular and he was different from her friends. After all, when he was little, his father told him to be strong and his mother to be kind. And because of this, he wants to be strong and kind. Kuzuma said that his mother died and his father died in the war with Celeria. But the guy looked at the children and said that right now they are his family and he is not alone. Bina shouted that she would cook lunch today because Kuzuma called them family, and she wants to make a special soup from leaves. It has little nutrition, but it is delicious. If the Count wants to be a good nobleman, then he must eat the peasants' food. Count Garano shouted in anger that he had lost elite soldiers and a golem because of the girl and Kuzuma. The man conceived, since they know the truth, why they are silent. But everything may turn out to be wrong. Cloud said Kuzum had no proof and couldn't contain their weakness. The Count shouted that the soldiers were alive and it was only a matter of time before they started talking. Claudu said that the case of the golem's attack on Celeria is closed. The Count believes that some of the nobles understand that something is wrong, especially those in the blues, and know that Celeria has spies in the area. The Count said that it would be a great failure if he was left alone. The nobles attack the inhabitants and another country attacks the inhabitants. The nobles understand this better than the citizens. But false information doesn't work forever, and it's only a matter of time before the others find out about it. Before it happens, he needs to finish his business. And if he doesn't have time, he'll be hanged. The Count sat down on the sofa and said that now he was a puppet in the hands of other nobles. Why should he put up with all this because of one magic crafter? And Cloud said that he had heard about the opening of Bina's store. Bina shouted at the whole store for people to come and see that the magic craft shop was open again. The man asked the girl about her business and why there were no two of them, a boy and a girl with rabbit ears. Bina said that everything was correct, and the man asked if she really did not know what they were doing now. Bina said she doesn't worry about people taking vacations, but she knows they can do one thing right now. Jin is just doing something somewhere. Jin finished the new invention and said that he wanted to create personal golems for Reiko to connect them before activation. Reiko took the hands of the new golems and activated the start connection technique. The golems shone with a radiance of energy, and Reiko shouted that they had the same height. Jin said it would be easier and more convenient when you need to pick something up, and asked if Reiko would give them names so that they would be her personal golems. Reiko tried to come up with names, but it didn't work out, and Jin said she could think about it later. The comrades came outside, and the guy said that they had planted seeds from Blueland, and the land was fertile. The rest were cultivating land fields, and they had an orchard. Jean showed the map that they had marked all the minerals and resources and could combine things more efficiently, do things on a limited resource base, and have the opportunity to go back. Jin said he wanted to learn from Bina, decide in the future who he was doing things for. But for now, he was doing it for himself. Reiko said if he looked good, he would understand that they were doing everything for their father. Reiko pointed in the direction of the giant house. Jin was shocked and delighted that the house was Japanese style and shouted that the house was the best. Jin was looking around the house and was happy. The guy said that it was unexpected that they had made it to Tatami themselves. Riko said she doesn't have her father's memories, but she didn't do the tatami completely. The robot recreated the object using photographs. It's not the same thing, but it looks like the original. Jin said it was convenient, but she also had magical powers, qualities, and knowledge. Jin said, after watching Bina, he realized that he had missed the knowledge about magic, and they are important for becoming a magic craftsman. But he got his knowledge from the master. Reiko realized that Jin was not happy, and the guy said that he did not like it, that the difference in knowledge between him and the Era Master was too big. Jin said he may have realized this after the incident in Kana and tried to be quiet in Blueland. Jin said that he must have withdrawn into himself again and did it again. Riko shouted that he was a good man. She thinks he's doing it out of common sense. Jin said that he needed to look for another way out. Now he was trying to create an engine and everything was not going very well. Jin said it would be better if they had another way of transportation, such as cars, ships, and airplanes. Reiko said they had a coma, but Jin said he wanted to make long trips comfortable. There is no gasoline or battery in this world, so the fuel will act as magic, and this is the main problem. Jin took out a stack of papers and said that he needed to check something and asked Reiko to call the wind. The sheets formed into a whirlwind, and Jin understood everything. The guy thought he was applying creation and digging, but they would also take effects to undo the recoil. Jin said the process didn't look easy, but it turned out to be very difficult. Riko asked what it had to do with the engine. Jin said that if they had a rollback, then he would benefit. The guy took the material and decided to show Reiko. The material turned into a pipe, and Jin said that he used air magic for the test. Usually, the engine uses energy from explosion and combustion, or releases energy from electricity. Rocket engine uses fuel only for the engine. We will change the required energy into dynamic force. But with magic, you can keep the dynamic force and set the engine in motion, so you can do something more efficient. Jin finished the invention. Reiko called it a pipe, but Jin said it was a rocket magic engine, and they were going to do a test now. So he asked Reiko to take it outside. Reiko's personal golems appeared and said that they would do it themselves, and took the engine together and carried it outside. The comrades came to the clearing, and Jin asked to install the engine and said that there would be a strong wind and you need to be careful. Jin activated the engine. Reiko grabbed onto it as a powerful stream of air burst out of it. Jin examined the invention and said that the recoil works, and with this they can hold the force, and shouted for Reiko to keep holding. Jin asked if she was okay and offered to use the help of personal golems, but the robot said that she would do everything herself. The airflow increased when suddenly Reiko lost her balance and lowered the engine down. Jin screamed in fright for the invention to stop. Dirt scattered on the ground. Jin asked if everything was okay while the robot was sitting on the ground, and a broken engine was lying next to it. Reiko apologized for breaking it. Jin said he would make a new one. Reiko said that everything failed because of her. Jin shouted that his mistake was because he was thinking about the result. Although he uses magic, the essence of research and item creation does not change. Jin said that's why it's not Reiko's fault. He told the robot to just go and take a bath. Reiko was sitting in a hot spring. She was thinking why he said that everything was fine, because she doubted the golem's help and brought problems to her father. Golem assistants appeared nearby and said that their father told them to wash too, because washing with magic is not fun. The assistant said that the father asked to support Reiko. The golem said that Reiko relies on her father, and they can rely on Reiko when they are not strong enough like her. Reiko said she still hadn't given them names and wasn't even sure she could give them two names as good as her father. The assistant said that the two of them want to help, and they were created for this, and they want to be useful to their father together. Reiko laughed and said that they were the sane people, created by their father. The robots looked up at the sky when the assistant said that the moon would appear soon. Reiko thought about the moon and the sun. Reiko told the assistants that one would be called Luna from the silver moon, and the other Soleil from the golden sun. The assistants said they liked it. Reiko came to the workshop, and Jin said that he had converted the research room into an experiment room, because they should make a real rocket in the future. Jin said that they would easily test and improve the rocket magic engine here. It remains to put it on a crane and test it. Reiko asked if her father could trust her to run the test again, so that he would leave it to her, Soleil, and Luna. The robots went into the experimental room. Jin took a seat behind the safety glass and waved to the assistants. The rocket engine was activated and Reiko and her assistants held it in place. After Reiko said that the magic was gone, Jin shouted that they had succeeded and had a great job. The assistants were delighted and Reiko asked if they could create a transport now. Jin thought that the energy is still not enough for an airplane, but it can be adjusted to the rotation speed, which means that it can be adjusted to the rotation speed of a water transport. Jin decided that he could make it smaller and put it in a non-motorized plane, but after that it would cease to be so. The guy said that there is a long way to go to put it into practice. Jin said that they should focus on the realities before continuing the experiments, and the first in this world would not be an airplane, but a ship. And they should go to the sea. The guy and the girl were on the beach. The place where they were was different from the island of Horai they were familiar with. If they follow the coastline, they will quickly reach the city of Patrak. The couple also wanted to find a small hotel along the way. The guy warned the girl to call him brother in public. Soon, during their walk, they found a hotel with a kind owner. A guy and a girl stayed in it. They went into their room. The guy, seeing her appearance, thought that the price of 300 tor per night for two was normal. He imagined a hotel on a tropical island just like this, although the guy had never been in them, so he couldn't know. In this place, the buildings were more open than in Blue Land. This island was located in the kingdom of Elias, to the south of the kingdom of Aglarea. That's why it was hot outside. If you look at the structure of the village of Kaina, Blue Land, and Patrak, you could understand that civilization was at the level of the Middle Ages. The girl did not know the meaning of the word Middle Ages, but the progress of this world has returned to the Mother Era. This was not the era of the Masters, where everyone could use the gate to teleport on a daily basis. That's why the girl thought so. After her words, the guy became interested in the ships of the era of Masters. But that didn't mean he wasn't interested in ships from this era. The girl also suggested that the guy take a walk. They went out to the port to look around. The guy squatted down and looked at the wooden boat with interest. The main material of the boat was wood and metal for durability. The guy noticed that there were only small boats at the port and there were no large vessels. Suddenly, the girl called out to her father, pointing her index finger to the side. The guy turned to the place she was pointing at. It was a boat floating on the sea. But the peculiarity here was not the girl, but the golem next to her. The guy saw that he was using his hands as paddles. The golem was the engine for the boat, after all. They did not get tired. But the golem's arms were too weak, and it was easy to lose balance in any event. And then there will be a loss of engine power. The guy was thinking about attaching the golem to the catamaran. A man was secretly listening to his words. He was interested in Jin's words. Jin continued talking. The catamaran was a vessel that could constantly move at high speed. There was one drawback to it. It was possible to turn over on sharp turns. The unknown man got up from his boat and confessed to Jin that he'd been eavesdropping on him. The girl realized that the guy was aware of the golems in boats. She had an exotic appearance. Her tan skin perfectly matched her blonde hair. The girl thought that Jin was a shipbuilder. She apologized to the guy for her eavesdropping, but in this city, the girl was the only one who created these ships. Therefore, she was interested in his words. Jin almost confessed to the girl that he was a master at magic crafting, but he was able to come to his senses. The guy told her that he was just a magic craftsman. A girl with a strong interest wanted to find out any information about the guy. He was a little confused by her numerous questions. She was overjoyed, because the guy didn't serve anyone and wasn't a member of the guild. For her, it was a blessing of the sea. Jin's companion did not want to interact with the girl, as she was more likely to get them into trouble. Jin wanted to ask her a few questions about the ships, but immediately a new acquaintance asked them for a favor. A group of 3 people came to the cafe. The girl brought me to this place because it was delicious and cheap. Jin was a little tired. They had to walk a lot to get to the cafe. The guy was weak in front of beautiful girls. A girl with an exotic appearance introduced herself to them. Her name was Marcia. She was a shipbuilder from a neighboring town. The guy in response also called their names of the girl. His name was Jin, and his companion was Reiko. That's how they met. Jin wanted to know what Marcia wanted to talk to him about. The girl, pointing her finger towards the sea, pointed out the reason for her acquaintance with them. There was a boat he knew in the sea. It was a boat with a girl and a golem that was attached instead of an engine and oars. Usually this type of boat was called a golem ship. The guy was a little confused by such a simple name. He told Marcia that they were not from this country, so they did not know about the name. Marcia, looking at Reiko, now understood why they had such boring clothes. That explained everything. The kingdom of Elias is surrounded by the sea, so they were rich in seafood, such as fish and other seafood. Their marine technology was the best among the countries. They also participated in many competitions on ships. The guy, while enjoying the meal, it was interesting to listen to the story of the kingdom of Elias. Therefore, Marcia immediately invited Jin to participate in this competition together. The guy was taken aback by her quick actions. The girl apologized. She was used to rushing because of her work. She informed him that the race would start in 5 days. Jin was stunned by the news. But that's exactly why Marcia was in such a hurry. The rules of the race stated that you need a golem as an engine and a person who will control it. Marcia said she would do everything and be in control. She offered him half of the winnings to make her a golem for the ship. She had already realized that it was pointless to look for something nearby, but she didn't have time to search for the golem anymore. Jin told her that if she tried to do something in a hurry, she might be able to find the golem maker. Although, if she uses such a golem in competitions, she probably won't be able to win. The gloomy girl knew about it. That was her problem. But she has something she wants back. Her store was taken away because Marcia's father lost all the property. Therefore, this competition was the perfect chance to regain his honor and the lost store. No matter how small the chance, the girl was resolutely ready to go for it. The guy wanted to know what she would do if she lost. Marcia has already given up the store to pay off her debts. She doesn't know what will happen to her if she loses. Jin also wanted to ask the girl why she turned to him. Marcia chose him because of his knowledge of golems and ships, and also her intuition told her that she would be able to trust Jin. Although the girl could be wrong, she chose him anyway. After all, if the worst happens, Marcia will lose her bet on the guy. Having said that, the girl smiled broadly. The guy, drinking coffee, told her that she had made a mistake. His companion agreed with his words, and Marcia sighed in confusion. Reiko thought that this competition was very suitable for her father's ability. They will benefit if they create a golem that can control the ship. Marcia looked at them in disbelief at her words. Jin wasn't sure about that, but if he had lost, it would have been awkward. Therefore, he agreed to make another bet, namely, a bet on their skills. If they do this, The chance of winning will increase. They bet on their skills, and they had to register as soon as possible. Marcia was happy. A company of 3 people were on their way to register. The reception desk was quite close to them. If they don't register today, they won't be able to participate in the competition. Along the way, Marcia wanted to know the guy's next plan. Suddenly, someone called out to her. The girl reluctantly responded with confusion. Her friend saw that she had found a magic craftsman. The girl agreed to his words. She really found him. Valentine was glad to hear that she now had a magic crafter. He thought about it and realized that he couldn't compete against her ship. Therefore, he wanted to offer her to become his shipbuilder and also his wife. The girl is tired of him asking her to become his wife again. Valentine already had 2 wives, but he wanted more. That's how the world worked for him. That's why the guy asked Marcia to go with him again. But the girl was distracted by Jin. He hurried her to hurry up with the registration of the team. After apologizing to Valentine, she went to the reception desk. The man noticed that she was not lying, so he said goodbye to her and let her go. Then, when the girl left, Valentine immediately frowned and frowned. He was annoyed that Jin had interrupted him. Moving away from Valentine, Marcia thanked the guy for his help. The guy asked if he was a nobleman or a lord's confidant. The girl was surprised that the guy guessed about Valentine's situation. He was an earl and a lord's assistant. Valentine looked like a bossy guy. He was clearly not a good person. Jin and Reiko had a negative attitude towards the man. Soon, they came to the check-in desk. Marcia went to register her team for the race. She needed to name her participants. She assumed the role of shipbuilder and controller. And Jin was a magic crafter who'd create a golem. The employee asked the guy for a magic crafter's license or proof of membership in the guild. However, Jin had nothing. Then the employee asked him for examples of the guy's work. Reiko came forward as an example of Jin's work, but he stopped her. The employee looked at the guy uncomprehendingly. Jin also told Tom that he had left his examples of work at the hotel. Therefore, the employee had to conduct a small test for the guy. Jin was stunned by the sudden test. The employee took out 2 small pieces and put them on the counter. He asked him to form and modify something from these materials. The guy looked at it with relief. He thought that the man would give him a written test about the flair of a magic craftsman. The employee took the guy out and asked him to go into the room. Reiko was worried that the guy had left. Out of anxiety, she called out to the guy, but he reassured her and promised to finish the test quickly. The employee, seeing the sign from Valentine, nodded, thereby showing that he has fulfilled everything. In the room, the man gave the guy a piece of some kind of material. Jin, taking it in his hands, realized that it was blue copper. The guy didn't know what to make of this stuff. He had several options for things he could turn blue copper into, but then his attention was attracted by the things on the hanger. These were the swimsuits that were used in the last competition. They organized a competition for their design. Jin, seeing this, was able to make his choice. He had to realize his idea on a certain table. The guy put the blue copper on the table and began the magic of shaping the material. Copper was slowly changing under its influence. The magic circle drawn under the table lit up. The guy noticed the light emission that appeared and looked at it in disbelief. After a while, Jin left the room. The girls looked at him expectantly. They wanted to know how the test went. Jin answered ambiguously, thinking that he had passed. The employee looked at the figure with displeasure. Marcia was outraged by the ambiguous response, but she saw the figurine. The girl was looking at something with embarrassment. Jin was smiling confidently and calmly, and Valentine noticed that something was wrong. The employee was holding a figurine made by Jin in his hands. It was Marcia in a swimsuit in a smaller version. The girl was surprised by the figure with her face. She wanted an explanation from the guy. He admitted that it was her figure in a swimsuit. She was embarrassed and outraged by what the guy had done. Jin, on the other hand, could not choose anything during the test, and therefore simply turned it into a figurine with her face in a swimsuit. The figure was wearing a swimsuit from that collection. It was problematic for the guy to make clothes out of copper, so he chose a swimsuit. Jin turned to the employee and wanted to know his test result. The man noticed the guy's speed and accuracy. Both of the guy's skills were very good. Therefore, Jin was able to register as a magic crafter. And he also became a participant in the 10th race on golem ships. The guy, upon hearing this news, suggested that everyone immediately arrange a meeting. Marcia hadn't forgiven him for the swimsuit yet. Valentin saw everything that happened to Marcia's team during this time. The man was unhappy that the girl was able to get a magic crafter into her team. He approached the employee and wanted to know what happened. The employee said that he used that table. The device that interfered with the activation of magic was under the table. The crystal and the circle were completely burned out. Valentine realized everything with amazement. He wanted to find out who this guy was, if he was able to defuse the device. But then I thought that the device probably just broke down on its own. There was no other option in the cause of the breakdown, but the man didn't care about the device anymore. After all, Valentine had another plan for mastering Marcia. Valentine confidently thought that he would win the competition and get Marcia. He will do anything for this. Then, he asked the employee for a statuette with Maria's face. But he did not give it to him. He needed to show the figure to the chief as proof. The mayor, Petroka, received a figurine. He praised the one who made it. The man also decided that he would design a swimsuit for a women's swimming competition. Evening came. The company celebrated the birth of the MDR team. Marcia was happy about it. The guy didn't understand the name of the team. These were the capital letters of their names: Marcia, Jean, and Reiko. Jin was confused by the name. He wanted to postpone the celebration. He needed to find out what they should do next. Marcia did not understand the meaning of his question. Jin was referring to what their plan was for the competition. He still didn't know the rules of the race yet, but Marcia took the brochure with the rules. The guy began to read into it. The rules were vague. There were no restrictions on the size and weight of the boat. There were also special awards for the design and idea of the ship. Jin saw it in the rules brochure. They shouldn't have any problems with speed, so they should think about whether they can win these awards or not. Rigo was sure they could. The guy was trying to win what they could, but he didn't understand why only women could be controllers. It was because of the boss's wish. The next day, Marcia didn't know what to do with the golem. The guy also told her not to forget about the boat. The girl did not understand his words because they already had a boat. However, she was not suitable for them to compete. If they want to be the fastest, they must also consider the balance of the golem and the boat. Leaving everything as it is, compatibility and efficiency will be low. They only had 4 days left. They should finish the basic construction faster. Then conduct a test launch and modify the boat. The girl thought that they would lose time if they redid the boat. But if they use it as a base, they won't be able to finish it in time. The guy had a vague idea of the plan. He needed the materials needed to create a golem. Marcia understood everything. She would get them. Jin also told the girl that he would finalize his plan when he saw the path they had to swim in the competition. During the course of the race, they must go to a certain rock and then return to the shore. The final will be announced on the day of the competition. The guy thought they should prioritize speed in racing. The main problem is how to reduce the lost turnaround time. The best solution would be a propeller. But making it would require detailed customization. They didn't have much time. Reiko suggested that he use a magic jet engine, but it will be difficult to control. There was only the option of rowing. The guy wanted to take full advantage of catamarans. Suddenly, he was attracted by a sound that sounded in the sea. Someone was jumping across the sea making a loud sound. It was a golem of extraordinary beauty. It was designed to resemble a mermaid, having fins and a fishtail. The guy looked at it with admiration. The blonde guy was talking to the siren on the ring. He was conducting a golem strength test. Suddenly, the blonde guy was next to the sitting genie. Jin stared at him in surprise. Suddenly, the stranger turned to him and asked about the doll that was standing next to Jin. The guy was stunned that he realized that Reiko was a golem. The blonde guy was glad that he had guessed right about Reiko. He wasn't sure before, so he decided to ask. The guy praised Jin for Reiko. It was well assembled. As a magic engineer, he couldn't stand still without confirming it. Jin was surprised by his words. That's what the magic artisans were called here. The blonde guy was Valley Reinhardt. He was from the land of showmen. Jin introduced himself to the guy in return. Reinhardt has never seen such perfect dolls as Reiko. The girl was flattered, because it was Jin who created her. After hearing this information from Reiki, Reinhardt was pleasantly shocked. It turns out that it was Jin who created her. Reinhardt thought he was just the owner of the doll. Dean was confused by the guy's admiration. Technically, he only fixed it. Jin also praised the guy. It was the first time he had seen a golem made from the skin of a magical beast. He was well balanced in strength and weight. Reinhardt was overjoyed. His interlocutor understood his work. It took the blonde guy a long time to set up the materials. Reinhardt and Jin began to discuss their common interest. They were completely engrossed in talking about golems. Dejectedly, Reiko waited for the guys to talk about everything. But their conversation did not stop. The girl could only stand silently. After a while, the guys shook hands. They were very pleased to talk to each other. Reiko finally waited for them to finish. Jin could actually still talk. He liked to discuss golems. Reinhardt didn't want to stop either, but he still had to check the siren. She was waiting for his next order. They didn't have much time before the golem boat competition. Reinhardt wanted to finish the test quickly. The blonde guy wanted to ask them about participating in the race. Jin confirmed his participation in them. The guys looked at each other with a pleasant expression. Reinhardt will be looking forward to meeting them at the races. Jin and Reiko left the seashore. They came back. Jin wanted to apologize to the girl for the delay, but Marcia was angry about something. It turned out that there were no materials in the store. It looks like someone bought all the materials after they signed up. Marcia looked at all the shops but could only buy bronze. The rest of the materials they needed were missing from store shelves. Jin thought it was weird. After all, everything was fine yesterday. It is true that there may be high demand, as there will be a golem boat competition soon. The guy thought about it. He calmed the girl down and told her that everything was fine. After all, they had bronze. Marcia was delighted with the guy's words. After all, Jin also had some materials with him. No wonder he was a master of magic crafting. Thanks to Marcia agreeing to go shopping, he managed to come up with a plan. They started to create a golem. The girl was happy. The guy applied the spell, melting, to the material, where the crackling, dark-colored stones began to come out of the ingot. Marcia was delighted by this. Jin explained to her that it was an empty rock inside the raw material. He was just separating it from a valuable substance. The guy told Reiko to use the bronze to create the outer layer of the golem. Marcia's appearance was taken as a reference golem. Marcia was surprised that Reiko could use magic too. The guy did not deny it because she was his sister after all. The girl was delighted with this amazing duo consisting of a brother and sister. The guy had to agree. Reiko was a very capable sister. Soon they were done, and Marcia was glad. Suddenly, she noticed that their golem was created by a humanoid type. The girl had heard that the golem would be created based on her prototype. But she thought that the golem would be made with oars or something else instead of hands. There were many ways to control the ship. For example, to make golems with paddles instead of hands, or a golem with fins. However, the humanoid type also had its advantages. Marcia started to think about it, but Jin asked her to name the golem. The girl was glad to be able to name the golem. She thought that someone else would name it. But, after all, Marcia was a master. The girl came up with the name Aro for the golem. The guy accepted it. After that, the golem opened its eyes and started launching. Marcia looked at him with admiration. The golem suddenly shouted and said incomprehensible words to Marcia. The girl stared blankly at the golem. Jin apologized to her. It was his fault. He forgot to install the language program. Besides, he wanted to establish knowledge about people. He needed Marcia's help. Bringing the hands of the girl and the golem closer, the guy used the magic spell, information transfer. He transferred Marcia's knowledge to the golem, so that Aro could control the boat. The golem confirmed the guy's words in agreement. Now Aro can also help them build a boat. That's why the guy created the humanoid type. This was just one of the advantages of such a golem. The guy called out to Reiko, who immediately hurried to them with a huge wheel. Everything was already ready. Jin wanted to show Marcia what only a humanoid type of golem can do. The creation of the boat began. Pedals were included in it. Meanwhile, when Reiko and busy building the ship, the guy wanted to show Marcia. There was a move that only a humanoid creature could make. Soon, everything was ready. The boat was waiting for them at the port. She was perfect and different from ordinary boats. The girl looked at the boat enthusiastically, even though she did not understand how it worked. The guy explained that the boat works with the help of legs. It uses pedals to rotate the water wheel, and the rotation will be used as a force for movement. Marcia wasn't sure if the boat would work. That's why the guy wanted to prove it back. Reiko was already in the boat. The girl began to pedal. She did all this with great power. Because of this, the boat sailed through the water at lightning speed. Marcia and Ero silently heard the guy scream due to the tremendous speed of the boat. They were completely doused with water. Marcia only said with determination that they would win. Sunset came. Marcia and Ero returned after a boat ride. This is what Jin noticed. He wanted to know the girl's feelings from swimming. The girl praised the boat. It was fast and stable and easily controlled. The Swan was a wonderful boat. However, it is so stable that it is difficult to make small adjustments to it. The boat was suitable for sailing in a straight line. The guy told the girl that he would try to make adjustments, but would not change the system. Marcia understood that. The girl wanted to confirm with the guy about the characteristics of the arrow. The guy thought she was fully functional. However, Marcia thought it was strange that Arrow couldn't swim faster than Reiko, who was just a child. After a while, the guy explained about Reiko. Marcia was slightly surprised to learn that Reiko was actually a doll. She didn't know what to be surprised about. Reiko was happy. She was able to tell at least someone that Jin was her father. A company of 3 people left their workshop. They will start the adjustment the next day. Unknown people were waiting for them to leave. Night fell. Everyone was fast asleep in their rooms. Except for Reiko, she looked reverently at the sleeping guy. Suddenly, she heard the sound of footsteps. Those came from Marcia's room. The girl narrowed her eyes frowningly. Reiko realized from the sound of footsteps that there were 2 strangers. The girl got out of bed and ran towards them. 2 bandits tried to break into the lock of Marcia's room door and break into it. But they were stopped for a moment by Reiko's voice. Reiko thought that the uninvited guests had the wrong number, but when she saw one of them with a gun, she immediately changed her mind. The guy who tried to break into Marcia's door ordered his friend to deal with the girl. He accepted the order and wanted to get closer to her, but Reiko responded with lightning speed and headed towards the bandits. She wanted them to shut up. After all, her father was asleep. With one blow, she immobilized the man. Then Reiko moved with lightning speed to the second guy. She dealt with him in one blow. The men were unconscious. Reiko didn't know what to do with the unconscious bandits. When suddenly I saw the sea. Reiko buried the unconscious bandits in the sand, up to their necks on the seashore, and left a warning sign. It said they were tired of attacking sleeping women. The girl did not understand why they did it, but suddenly she noticed a fire in the distance. It was in this direction that the workshop was located. Soon, a group of 3 people were running towards the workshop. Reiko apologized for not waking them up earlier, because she didn't want to disturb their peace. Marcia was worried that the Swan would be burned, but Jen was sure that the boat was safe. The girl in anger wanted to know why the boat should be safe. When suddenly the guy pointed to her side, Marcia saw a huge number of other people's boats not far from the shore. There she noticed a boat with an arrow among them. Ro was an independent type golem, so she immediately evacuates the boat in case of danger. Marcia sighed heavily because she was worried for nothing. An alarmed Reinhardt suddenly approached them. He told Jin that it was too early for them to relax. The guy was surprised by his sudden appearance. If everything continues, the fire will spread throughout the port. A number of people gathered to put out the fire. However, things turned out very badly. A terrifying sea serpent of doom emerged from the sea. It reached an enormous size and had a mouth full of small, sharp teeth. Jean and Marcia were shocked by the sight of him. It was a monster that usually appeared only on the open sea. At the moment, the siren is attracting the monster's attention, but it won't last long. After all, she wasn't cut out for fights. Reinhardt wanted to lure the Serpent of Doom to the nearest marina and defeat it with magic. Jin understood the guy and started using the spell Formation. The guy used it to create a spear. He ordered Arrow to help the siren with distracting the monster, and Reiko to use the Swan as a foothold. Jean asked Marcia if she was against his orders. The girl replied negatively. She wanted them to defeat the monster. Reiko immediately began to follow her creator's orders. She jumped up with lightning speed and landed on the ship. The boat was approaching the monster. Reinhardt ordered the siren to surface. Marcia ordered Arrow to circle around the monster, watching the surface of the water. The golems accepted the order of their owners. The siren rapidly began to rise up in the water, followed by a monster. When the siren rose up, floating in the air, it was the moment of the attack on the sea serpent. Reiko attacked him with her spear. The siren dodged the other way. While the monster was stunned by the unexpected attack, Reiko, without stopping, struck again. The Serpent of Doom was completely neutralized, and Jin realized that the moment they needed had come. Reinhardt and Reiko quickly used the magic fire spear. The attack with the help of magic was aimed at the sea serpent of perdition. An explosion was heard from its power over the sea. The monster was eliminated. Only its remained. Marcia looked at them in shock. They defeated him. The siren informed its creator that the snake had stopped moving. Reinhardt informed the others that they had defeated the monster. From this news, all the residents of the city were overjoyed. They rejoiced in the victory over the terrifying monster. Reiko called out to her creator. Jin thanked her and Aro for their help in the victory. The girl was glad of it. However, it seems that several boats were damaged. Marcia understood the guy's words. She and Aro will help them. Reinhardt wanted to tell Serena to help them too, and he and Jin will help repair golems and boats. The guy didn't mind it. Reiko was ordered to put out the remaining fires on the docks. The port chief was annoyed that they would not be able to get enough sleep. He ordered his employee to wake up all the shipbuilders and magic artisans in the gut. Reiko put out fires. Aro and Marcia found damaged golem boats. The port staff also contributed to their assistance. Reinhardt and Jin were doing repairs. Everyone was busy right before dawn. The tired guys from work finally finished with all the chores. It was a difficult night, but they were able to help others. Jin was tired, but he didn't think it was such a bad night. The boats and berths are as good as new. Moreover, the guy was enjoying the sunrise. Suddenly, Reinhardt was hailed by a girl unknown to Jean. Her name was Elsa. The blonde guy invited Elsa to join him for watching sunrise. The girl's gaze stopped on the black-haired guy. Looking at him, she said that the view in front of her was really very beautiful. The girl with flushed cheeks looked ahead with interest. It was unknown if he was looking at Jin or the sunrise behind him. However, immediately grabbing Reinhardt by the hand, the girl wanted to take him away, because everyone was worried about him. He could only leave them. Reinhardt said goodbye to Jin. Elsa repeated the name of the black-haired guy questioningly. Her gaze rested on him once more. Jin, yawning, wanted to go back to the hotel and sleep. But Marcia wanted to say something to him, but the guy stopped her conversation. There were a lot of things he wanted to talk about, but they had to rest first. Marcia could only accept it. No matter what other people are planning, they definitely won't give up. Jin was seriously and angry about the incident. At the same time, there was a strong bang on the table in another place. Valentino was angry that his plan had failed, but they were still able to damage the boats of other participants. His interlocutor thought it was better to reduce the number of participants, but then the competition would have just been canceled, and the man wanted to get everything he could. However, even though they sent some bandits to do this, somehow they ended up buried in the sand. It was also strange that the sea serpent of doom appeared at such a time, but Valentino did not think deeply about it. The man just wanted to destroy everyone at the competition. It doesn't matter what he has to do it. Sometime later, in another place, Marcia was in a swimsuit. The girl was not sure that this outfit was needed for the competition, but the guy told her that he still needed it. Jin was embarrassed by his passion because of the beautiful appearance of the girl in the outfit. Marcia, blushing, embarrassedly covered her body with tears almost coming. The girl was wearing a tight-fitting open swimsuit. The port chief just laughed at that. This swimsuit was created for this year's swimsuit competition. They wanted to use this design for 10 years. Jin closed his eyes in embarrassment. Marcia felt insecure because of the swimsuit. She was on the verge of crying out of embarrassment. One sunny day, the guy was at the venue of the tournament. There was a preliminary stage, but there were a lot of people on the street. In addition, there were kiosks everywhere, since this place was used for events all year round. There's another race besides the Golem boat race, namely, the inserts on the participants. A huge amount of money was used that day. Reinhardt said that everyone liked number one at the moment, Earl Valentino. Jin noticed a girl next to the guy. The blonde guy introduced his younger sister, Elsa, to everyone. He couldn't imagine her before because of the recent commotion. Jin smiled understandingly, but suddenly a blonde girl approached him quickly and directly. She silently stared at the guy with interest. Jin became worried, while Reiko quietly slipped forward, trying to block the guy from Elsa's gaze. Elsa was able to overcome her embarrassment after a while. She shyly thanked the guy for saving Reinhardt. A girl introduced herself to the guy, calling herself Elsa Randall. In response, Jin introduced himself and also introduced his small team. Marcia noticed that Elsa was also wearing a swimsuit. That's why she also participated in the Golem Boat Tournament. Marcia noticed that the color of Elsa's swimsuit was different. Rather, they will meet in the final. The girl did not want her to lose before reaching the final, but Elsa was confident in her abilities. She and Serena were the strongest. Marcia wanted to start an argument about this, but she was stopped by a negative hail. Valentino confidently told the company in front of him that they, the Glory of Elijah team, would be the winner. Letzi, on the other hand, lay relaxed in the arms of their golem. The man laughed nastily and told Marcia that he hoped she would not be disqualified at the preliminary stage. Jin didn't understand why he had come to them. The girls also did not know this. They were not afraid of meeting Valentino, but uncomfortable. A huge number of people were sitting in the stadium. The 10th Golem boat race will begin soon. This time, as many as 35 groups participated, which was the largest number of groups in history. The commentator introduced himself to the audience and paid attention to the special guests. The first was the mayor of Patrak, and next to him was the magic master Bernard. The kingdom of Elias possessed many kinds of artifacts. The commentator used one of them, a loudspeaker. It was also allowed to use a magic eye and a screen during the race. Jin noticed the convenience of the artifacts. He could have created them, but the guy didn't have any TV shows, so he wasn't interested. The participants of the race appeared on the screen. All the spectators of the tournament noticed that the design of the swimsuit for the competition has changed. The participants were grouped according to the color of their swimsuit. The group consisted of 5 people. They prepared 7 colors of swimsuits. All this was chosen by the mayor shortly before the start of the event. Immediately, he paid attention to the participant number 35. It was Marcia. The mayor of Petroka on the screen showed a figure in the form of a girl made by Jin on the test. Marcia was shocked that he brought her to the tournament. Bernard examined the figure carefully. He noticed that it was made of copper. He also spotted Marcia's golem. The man saw the water wheels of the boat. He was surprised that they used them as an energy source. Marcia's team may be able to get through this stage. Marcia, hearing the words of the Master of Magic, was inspired. The commentator asked Bernard if he was involved with any other team. Bernard drew attention to the number 1 contestant, Earl Valentino. His golem had a giant body and 2 large paddles along with it. Although it looked simple, but rather the golem was powerful and strong. Everyone had high hopes for Earl. Then the commentator drew attention to the mermaid golem number 3, Siren. The design is ideal for moving in water. She was also strong in turns. The commentator also drew attention to the winged golem number 27 and the 4-armed golem number 28. However, even if they had the perfect boat and golem, they would not be able to win without the ability to control them. No one knew who would win the first place. The Master of Magic wished everyone great performances after his speech. There was loud applause from the entire stadium. The commentators started looking for something in the box. They needed to identify with the first group. The guy pulled a dark blue ball out of the box. The first group included all the participants in a dark blue swimsuit. Marcia was wearing exactly that color. She was a little nervous. The girl was hoping to take a look at the others before the race. There was already a magic eye behind her, so Marcia had no choice. Raising her hand up, the girl announced with all determination that she would overtake everyone after the turn. Therefore, her rivals must do everything possible to sail away from her until this moment. Jin and Reiko were embarrassed by the girl's words. Marcia's statement to the entire stadium made the audience come to an indescribable delight. But not everyone was happy with her statement. Some of the participants were worried. Soon, all the participants of the first swim lined up. All the participants had a serious expression. Suddenly, one of the participants turned to Marcia. She thanked her, and the girl's golem was engulfed in flames on the dock. But thanks to Marcia, she was able to participate in the race. However, the girl warned Marcia that the match was a match, so she would not lose. Marcia was inspired by her, and also said that she would not lose. The countdown has begun. The audience was excited about the upcoming race. The contestants were also waiting for the start of the match, and soon the score ended. The start of the first race has come. Instantly, the participants headed forward. All of them started at the same time. But the one with the biggest starting lead was participant number 14. The girl had an exotic appearance. A great leap forward happened thanks to a golem with strong arms. The oars made a big splash when swimming. Participant 14 was happy about this. She believed in her victory. Even participants 35 and 28 couldn't catch up with her boat. It doesn't matter what kind of strange boat they used. Even if the golem has 4 arms, speed was the main thing here. Strength is what they need. The participant number 14 accelerated even more. She was confident of her victory. There was a cliff ahead. Maybe she could swim the turn without competition. Jin didn't think the girl's words were wrong. Speed is really the deciding factor in the race. However, if someone tries to forcibly turn the ship at that speed, they will lose their balance during the turn. This makes them vulnerable. Therefore, of course, they will be overtaken. At the same moment, another participant reached girl 14. At the turn, participant number 28 overtook participant 14 from the inside. The girl was surprised by this, but suddenly Marcia was behind her. She told her that contestant number 14 no longer had time to overtake them. At the same moment, the girl was deafeningly and lightning fast heading forward, swimming through the turn. Finally, Marcia and Arrow will be able to overtake them. The girl immediately ordered Arrow to command forward. The golem began to carry out the order. By quickly pedaling the boat, Arrow made the use of water energy even faster with the help of the boat's water wheels. The swan headed forward with all its power and speed. At the same time, the ship left a trace on the water. With these actions and also the incredible speed of the boat, they made others tense up. Reinhardt and Valentino were shocked by what they saw. The blonde guy thought that they had shown all the possibilities of the boat when there was a fight with the sea serpent of perdition. Reinhardt was shocked and at the same time delighted by Jin's excellent work. At the same time, participant number 35, Marcia, made an explosive leap forward. The girl was quickly ahead of the other participants. She felt a wonderful feeling at the same time, as if Marcia could see and feel everything around her. Looking at the steering wheel, she thought that she really liked this incredible feeling when controlling the boat. The feeling of the wind hitting your face and then sliding through your hair. With this feeling, she could leave everything behind. From the surging feelings, the girl excitedly confessed her love to everyone. The boat was moving forward at high speed, without stopping. After a while, Marcia overcame the finish line. She, the participant at number 35, was able to get the first place and fulfill her communication in that she would overtake everyone. The girl, still enjoying the race, turned to the Magic Eye. She said that with her and the Swan, Arrow, and the MDR team, they will move towards the finals. Marcia, appearing on the magic screen, thereby drawing the attention of every viewer to herself, said that they would take the first place. Valentino was unhappy. He won't let that happen. It doesn't matter what he has to do it. The man clenched his hands into a fist in anger. The winner of the preliminary races is the number 1 participant, the Slava Ilya team, namely Litsa. This was the end of the preliminary competition, and the very next day they would meet with the 7 finalists. The commentator drew the audience's attention to the screen. 7 winners of the preliminary races appeared on the magic screen. Among them were Marcia and Elsa. Everyone was looking forward to tomorrow's finals. Elsa, turning to Marcia, told her that she would not lose. Marcia agreed, because she doesn't want to lose either. The girl turned to the other finalists and said about a fair fight. All participants agreed with this rule. Already at the hotel, Jin scolded the girl slightly. After all, she put on a show at the race. Marcia began to apologize to the guy. If she hadn't done something like that, she would have left herself an escape route. Jin didn't understand about running away. Marcia had the best golem and the best boat. Therefore, if by some chance she could not control them, then in order not to run away, the girl did it. She said those words to hold on to her weak self. Marcia's hands began to tremble at the admission of her weakness. For some reason, it seemed to her that even a weak person like her could fight normally. Marcia, after her words, only looked sadly and weakly at her trembling hand. The guy wanted to say something to the girl, but Reiko beat him to it. She told Marcia she shouldn't worry, because Aro was a golem created by Reiko's father, and the swan was also modified by the guy. From her words, Marcia stopped feeling sad. She felt fine. But Reiko kept talking. Marcia was the only one on the battlefield. The one who can give the appropriate orders to Arrow and the one who can control the boat was Marcia. And the one who perfectly controlled the best golem and boat and captured the victory in the qualifying matches was also her. Marcia smiled and noticed that Reiko didn't compliment well. Jin promised that he would teach her that. But Reiko wanted to resist. because for her it was not a compliment. Marcia, patting Reiko's head with a wide smile, understood the girl's words. She will meet their expectations and win this tournament. After all, it was for her own good. Evening came on the street. The trio approached a beautiful building. Marcia was worried about this place, because it was for the nobility. But the guy did not make a mistake with the place. They came to the right building. Earlier, Reinhardt, having seen the golem in Jin's boat in action, invited the guy to have dinner together. Reinhardt had already booked a table and handed the guy an invitation letter, not letting Tom refuse him. Jin remembered what Reinhardt had told him then. Marcia was surprised that the guy was so weak to pressure and couldn't refuse. Suddenly, Reinhardt and Elsa approached them. They thanked those for their presence and wanted to go into the building with them. Jin barely greeted them as he and Reiko tried to hold Marcia back. After all, she wanted to go back to the hotel. The company entered the building. Delicious and luxurious-looking dishes were waiting on the table, while fragrant steam was coming from them. Lady Marcia and her MDR team were sitting across from the Randall family. The girl was worried and wanted to leave, but Jin calmed her down. Reinhardt and Elsa's team was called the Blue Marine. Reinhardt called them over to celebrate passing the preliminary tests. The girl stuttered and wished them good health. She was very nervous, and Reinhardt noticed that. He asked her about her condition. She was concerned about the interior of the room. The room was decorated with luxurious and expensive things, and there were also maids and a butler. Marcia nervously asked the guy if he was a noble. Reinhardt agreed. He was the fourth son in the family. It wasn't necessary to pay attention to it. After all, he is a man from the kingdom of Shoulder. So the guy said not to worry about his behavior in front of him. Jin wanted to know what they were going to talk about. Reinhardt immediately cheered up. He wanted to start a conversation about boats and golems. But he was stopped by his sister's reproachful glance in Reinhardt's direction. So the guy stopped talking about it. Jin realized that Reinhardt wanted to talk to them about another topic. There was one more issue they needed to discuss. The blonde guy wanted to talk to them about the fire that happened recently. Everyone immediately became serious. The fire was set on fire at Marcia's cruise dock, and from there it spread to other berths. Marcia didn't believe it because they didn't leave any combustible items on the dock. Reinhardt thought so too. Jin realized that someone had started a fire, and the perpetrator was targeting Marcia. The girl was surprised by this. She didn't understand why someone was targeting her. Jin also didn't know why someone was targeting the girl. The guy also noticed that Randall invited them in order to find out if they had someone in mind. Reinhardt agreed with his suggestion. Marcia began to list possible enemies. It could have been anyone she knew. The guys were surprised by the number of her enemies. Of all the list, she believed that her father's debt was the main problem. But the guy thought differently. If it was a question of debt, then it would be more profitable to sell her boat than to set fire to the pier. Reiko remembered that there were several people who wanted to kidnap Marcia that night. Then she thought they were just ordinary bullies. This meant that there was a possibility that the perpetrator was targeting Marcia and her boat. Most likely, their goal was to prevent her from taking part in the race. Whatever the reason, it's better to stay alert. Unlike the preliminaries, the final path will be announced just before it starts. Reinhardt had a bad feeling about this. The guys went outside. Jin didn't understand why Reinhardt treated his team so well. Reinhardt was a diplomat. He didn't want anything to happen between Elias and Scheller. Moreover, it happened right in front of him, so he will find out the truth behind this case. Moreover, if this case is really related to the race, then Elsa will be in danger. Reinhardt couldn't close his eyes to what had happened. This did not mean that he sympathized with them. Jin understood the meaning of the guy's words and apologized for thinking about something else. However, it would be a lie for Reinhardt if he said that he had not thought about favoring them at all. After all, they were friends of magic artisans. Reinhardt enjoyed talking to Jin. That's why he invited the guy to the Scheller. Jin smiled and told Tom to fight together with all their might in the final so that they would have no regrets. The audience watched the race with excitement. The next day, the finals of the 10th Golem boat race began, and the one with the biggest starting lead was the number 1 participant, Litsa, from the Slava Ilia team. Jean and Reinhardt stared intently at the race while Valentino just grinned. He was confident of his victory. The rest of the participants were in a dead end. The commentator suggested that the participants were afraid of each other, so they did not gain much speed. Marcia was worried about this. She noticed that the participants just gave up. They were just blocking their way. Elsa gave the order to the siren through the ring. The mermaid golem immediately tried to turn around to sail away from the boats, but they blocked the girls' path again. Jean noticed that there was a bad situation for the girls. The boats blocking them were marked close to Marcia and Elsa. With the acceleration of the arrow, Marcia could easily outrun them, but that would be the case if there was only one boat in front. However, the catamaran has a large body, so she will not be able to pass through the middle of the two boats. But if she tried to outrun them from the side, the passage would also be easily blocked. Moreover, they even mix places with those who block Elsa. These four boats are working together to stop possible overtaking. Jin thought that they had given up from the very beginning of the finals. There must have been some condition that causes the participants to have no choice but to do so. Marcia was angered by the situation. Didn't they agree to fight the race fairly? One of the participants was scared by the girl's scream, although she did not hear Marcia very well. Another participant understood the meaning of the girl's words. But if they don't, then something bad will happen. The participants had to continue to block the path of Elsa and Marcia. Valentino was involved in this incident. The man was sipping a drink in a relaxed manner. He became bored watching the race. It was good for him because everything was going as he had planned. Valentino will definitely make Marcia his own. The girl was angry. She didn't want them to get in her way, no matter what their reason or purpose was. Everyone joined this race for their own reasons. There are a lot of people who dropped out at the preliminary stage, so that only those who want to fight with all their might or do something like that remain. Marcia didn't know who was behind it, but they didn't dare to hinder those who want to fight seriously. They didn't dare to do something so despicable. The girl immediately ordered Aro to turn around. The golem accepted the order of its controller, and the boat began to pull back. The participants were shocked by this. One of them noticed that Marcia was turning left and wanted to prevent her from changing lanes. But Marcia confidently and calmly managed to slip through and move forward, leaving those participants behind her. The audience was shocked by her sudden movement and overtaking of the participants. She didn't just slow down, but immediately created a big gap. Then she pretended to walk away slowly. Then, when those two boats were lured inside, Marcia made a sudden acceleration. It was a rough game, using Arrow's instant power. However, it was the best move Marcia could come up with. In order to make full use of the best golem and boat, a good skill in management was also needed. The guy was glad that Marcia was able to find a way out of the situation. Jin stroked Reiko's head. She was happy too. But suddenly Reiko noticed a lot of magical reactions from the sea. They were approaching Marcia at high speed. This reaction meant only one thing. The girl recognized them as a flock of sea snakes of doom, sailing in one direction. The guy, hearing Reiko's words, immediately became serious. He was worried about a pack of sea snakes. There were about 30 of them. A huge flock of sea snakes of doom was heading towards Marcia and the rest of the participants. Jin realized that the situation was serious. He was alarmed that they had appeared at a certain moment. Riko suggested canceling the tournament. But even with the cancellation, the flock will be able to catch up with the participants. They will not have time to swim away from them quickly. The guy asked the girl if she could beat them. Riko could beat them. It was easy for her to do it. Although she was worried about their location, the pack was at the back of the island. Reiko wasn't sure if she could get there in time. Jin thought that if he could create a swan, then he could get there in time. Therefore, he immediately went to the pier in Reiko's arms. The guy brought a device in the form of a small rocket. He was going to attach it to the spare boat. The problem was the stability and strength of the boat. Therefore, they had to work with the spare parts of the swan for now. Then they just have to do everything. The guy hoped that the ship would not collapse. Jin turned to Reiko. The guy wasn't enough for the role of controller, so Reiko also had to control the steering wheel with one hand. Jin will control the exit. With the help of the device, they will not exhaust their magic power. Riko noticed that the situation was the exact opposite of a golem boat race. The guy didn't understand the meaning of her words. Immediately, Jin began to steer the boat. He started the maxi jet engine. The boat sped across the water at lightning speed. The boat was gaining rapid speed, which made Jin feel sick. He felt that the situation was not good. It was dangerous. After all, the speed of the boat was stunningly fast, which is why the boat took off when it collided with the waves. The guy asked Reiko about the direction, if it was the right one. They were in the right direction. The girl felt their magic. The 10th island was also visible ahead. If they continue to swim forward, they will soon engage the sea snakes in battle. The guy noticed the appearance of a flock of sea snakes of doom. He was glad that they had finally arrived. Immediately, a flock of sea snakes of doom was subjected to a magical attack. Attack after attack was inflicted on the monsters, thereby eliminating them. The girl, without stopping, used her magical powers to destroy and neutralize all the sea snakes of doom. She needed to shoot at the water to provoke those. It was necessary to divert the attention of the pack of monsters from the island of Io. All this had to be done before Marcia and the other participants arrived. Jin wanted Reiko to crush the monsters that appeared out of nowhere. The sea snakes were completely enraged by the deafening explosions. They were quickly following the tracks of the guy and the girl with anger. Reiko noticed that one of them had dived under the water. Jin asked her if she could walk underwater. It wasn't a problem for the girl. Then the guy started looking for something in the bag. The guy was holding a lot of small stones in his hand. He didn't give them away. If they went too deep, it would be very difficult. Reiko saw that he was holding magic stones in his hand. The guy had to restrain them. To do this, he poured more magic into them than they can handle. After that, the guy just threw the magic stones overboard into the water. The magic-activated stones began to glow in the water. Later, at the depth of the sea snakes, the magic stones exploded. Because of this, the sea snakes of perdition, which are underwater, surfaced. Reiko was delighted by this. It was just a distraction. It was the guy's favorite moment. Jin used the acoustic detection spell. From the acoustic vibrations in the water, a flock of sea snakes of perdition roared and tried to rise into the air. The guy's spell worked. He was worried that the high frequencies would only spread over a short distance, but he succeeded. Reiko immediately started using magic. She created a huge explosive ball with the help of a magic explosion. The girl directed the explosive ball towards the sea snakes. Soon there was a deafening explosion at the place where the monsters were. The guy did not take into account that the explosion would raise waves in the sea. Therefore, the boat tilted forward, thereby lifting Reiko into the air. The girl fell into the water, being at a distance from the boat. She wasn't worried about the situation. Reiko was a little tired after the spell. The guy couldn't do anything. He wanted to tell the girl to wait for his approach, when suddenly she disappeared from sight. The sea serpent of doom attacked Reiko. Jin was immediately alarmed. The monster captured the girl in its mouth. Reiko got stuck in the back of the monster's teeth. She couldn't get herself out of the mouth of the sea serpent of doom. So she told Jin to run to another place. She wanted to eliminate the monster. But the girl did not finish her plan. Jin was already at the ready with a gloomy face. The guy transformed the magic power and directed the flow of magic at the monster. At the same moment, the spell Light Ray overtook the sea serpent of doom, thereby eliminating the monster. From the attack, the monster relaxed its grip and relaxed its mouth. The girl was freed from the sea serpent. Together with the monster's head, it began to fall. The girl fell into the water again. Jin sighed wearily and with relief. Suddenly, the girl immediately found herself next to the guy's boat. She apologized to Jin, but he wanted to know her condition. Reiko was fine, thanks to the guy. Jin gave the girl his hand so that she could climb onto the boat. In fact, the girl would have been able to get out and deal with the monster without his help, to which Reiko immediately began to deny. The remains of a flock of sea snakes of perdition floated in the sea. Reiko started checking for magic power to see if they got rid of all the monsters. Reiko noticed something. Soon the guy noticed the girl's unusual reaction. There were no more monsters, but the girl received a new reaction of magical power from the island of Io. It was a golem. The guy thought that someone had already reached the island, but it was not so. The golem was underwater. It was not the golem of the participant. Jin understood the gravity of the situation. He didn't understand what was going on. The participants will soon reach the 10th island. The situation was not good. So the guy asked Reiko to go and see the golem, but the girl was worried that she would leave the guy all alone. But he calmed her down. The guy was a little tired, so he'll make a detour and come back. Reiko accepted the guy's order. In one motion, the girl took off her dress, ending up in one swimsuit. She'll get there in a minute. The guy also told her to deal with the golem if it was dangerous. He also wanted to get his hands on its core. Reiko plunged into the water and began her task. If the golem was dangerous, then the appearance of a pack of monsters was also planned. Even if they were after Marcia, the guy didn't understand their true purpose. Meanwhile, Reiko was rapidly sailing towards the island. She was like a fish in water. Her speed was amazing. Soon the girl noticed two golems nearby. They were ready to attack someone and were aiming for a certain ship. After all, the goal of the golems was aimed specifically at Marcia. They wanted to destroy the swan boat. The dark blue golems headed towards the boat. The catamaran was slowly sailing through the water. The perfect moment to attack the boat had come. The golem pointed its sharp-tipped limb towards the swan boat, but he was immediately stopped. Riko quickly dealt with her opponents. Aro felt something. Marcia noticed it. Marcia's golem reported Reiko's presence. The girl didn't think it was strange. Perhaps Jin is also cheering them on at the moment. Marcia asked the golem about his condition. Aro was fine, but there was an incident. Marcia realized that the boat's water wheel was out of order. Jin warned her that it wouldn't be able to handle the load after all. Marcia must sail with full force only in important moments of the race, because the ship will not be able to withstand. The girl thought that the hull of the boat would break because it was her father's boat, but the guy said it was the wheel. He realized this when he went to check the boat with Reiko. Although he tried to apply reinforcement, the connection of the belt and blades may not withstand maximum power. Since they had few rare materials, Jin decided to use them to base the hull, so he was unable to strengthen the water wheel. And even a belt made of rare material will not be able to withstand pressure for a long time. The girl could easily replace the belt, but she had to be careful with the water wheel. Marcia realized the weakness of her boat. Even with the addition of some of Jin's own materials, they could only buy bronze. Marcia did not think that the final race would be so long. Marcia was annoyed because Elsa had caught up with her. But after they circumnavigate Io Island, there will be a long, straight line. Letzi was unhappy that the girls were quickly closing the gap with her. She started swearing at her golem. It was useless to her. Even though she cut someone off to win the competition, it was all in vain. However, the girl immediately calmed down. Letzi wanted to cover the difference between the golems of the rivals with her abilities. After all, she had the pride of a sailor. Immediately, the girl ordered her golem to increase the speed of the boat to maximum power. Litze gained even more speed than before. The girl came out of the shadow of Io Island at high speed. Elsa ordered her golem to continue. She couldn't let Litze close the gap they had just made in the reef area. The golem accepted Master Elsa's order. The girl was sorry. She didn't want to put pressure on her golem. But, in the end, this is what the creator of the siren wants. Elsa could only agree with this. The commentator noticed Elsa's acceleration. He knew that, most likely, Litze would not let her close the gap. The guy also noticed Marcia. The girl realized that the remaining two participants were going into danger with their actions. The girl accelerated and increased her speed. She did it in order to win. Marcia also made her move. The battle for victory will be decided between three teams. Among them, only Litze was very tense. Only the long island of Io remained to the venue. It was a pure battle of speed between the teams. Valentino frowned and stared intently at the race. At the same time, Reinhardt looked at everything with interest, and Jean wished Marcia a win. The girl was doing her best. Elsa and Marcia's boats were rapidly approaching Litze. Soon Elsa, to the shock of the girl, overtook her. And then Marcia caught up with her, leaving Litze aside. Anger flooded the girl for a moment. Because of this, she did not notice that she had stopped. The girl, noticing what had happened, turned back to her golem. He was overstressed due to the use of maximum power. Litze noticed that the golem's hands were shaking. He wanted to keep rowing, but he couldn't do it anymore. The girl touched her golem and stopped it, so they stayed at sea behind the two private ships. At the same time, Marcia and Elsa were trying to outrun each other. The siren was sailing along with the boat at maximum speed. Aro pedaled at the same speed. Elsa and Marcia were inspired. They wanted to win this competition. Their boats were heading for the finish line with incredible speed. But suddenly, a crackling sound was heard. It damaged the water wheel of Marcia's boat. She immediately noticed the problem, but Aro did not stop. The golem, without stopping, pedaled the boat hard. The swan continued to sail. Marcia could still continue to participate in the competition. The swan sailed through the water at a powerful speed. Marcia and Elsa matched up. the girl was able to reach her opponent. Elsa, noticing this, turned to the siren. But the siren couldn't go on. She was overworked, and from using maximum power, the girl was steaming imperceptibly in the water. The golem could only move at low speeds. Elsa had to accept this news. The girl was a little sorry. Victory was not far from her. She thanked the siren, and then they continued to move slowly towards the goal. Elsa also wanted to fix the golem afterwards. Marcia, without slowing down, heard the commentator's words that Elsa had slowed down the speed of the boat at the last minute, despite the fact that it was fun during the whole race. But everyone had one thing they couldn't forgive. Marcia understood that. The girl overtook the first team and the third team. The 35th team swam the finish line. Marcia won. The MDR team emerged victorious. It was a touching victory. The commentator approached the gloomy girl and wanted to know her condition, when suddenly she didn't answer him, just frowned at the guy. The commentator was surprised by her displeased expression. Marcia suddenly grabbed the microphone from the commentator. The girl turned to her secretive rival who was interfering with her in the race. He always interfered in her affairs and was even involved in her problems with participating in golem boat competitions. Marcia never wanted to forgive him. Although the girl didn't have any evidence at the moment, they would definitely pay for everything. The audience didn't understand what she was talking about. Valentino just frowned at her words. Suddenly, a statuesque woman turned to him. She asked the man about Marcia's words. It was the Marquis Dominic de Firenziano. The man was surprised by her appearance. Dominic noticed that he did not come out to his team. Valentino was alarmed that such a person with a high title would come to a place like this, to which she replied that the race is one of the biggest events in the country. Therefore, she must see everything for herself. Besides, if her subordinate is cheating, then of course she should have come to this place. Valentino was taken aback by the Marquise's words, but immediately the remains of golems were thrown out on the pier, which were hidden under the island of Io. Marcia and the race organizers were stunned. Reiko jumped out of the water onto the dock and held a piece of one of the golems in her hands. The girl congratulated Marcia on her victory. Reiko gave Marcia the part. It was the core of a golem. The girl reported that the golems were hiding in the rocky area of Io Island. Now Reiko was wondering who made them and for what. She couldn't wait to find out. Marquise Dominique immediately turned her attention to Valentino. In her hands, she showed a detail of the golem. The woman asked the man about it, but he tried that he didn't know anything about this detail. But Jin caught him on the pretense. He and Reinhardt can find out whose part it is when using the magic of reading on it. The man's face immediately changed at the sight of them. Valentino insulted the guys with a gloomy face. He realized that Reinhardt and Jin were to blame for the situation. They calmly looked at the gloomy man. The blonde guy wanted to force Valentino to confess everything because his sister was involved in this incident. Valentino will lose his title after that. Reinhardt wanted to take the man out so that he confessed, calling him the former count, but he just stared at them speechlessly. Bernard took over the golem control core. The man wanted to find out what was in the golem's core. Therefore, Bernard used the magic of reading on him. After application, the man stared at the contents of the core with wide eyes. Immediately, a voice from the core sounded through the stadium. He talked about the detention of all boats except number 1, and also about the destruction of Marcia's boat. The audience was stunned by the words spoken. The command was given by Count Valentino. Marcia, when she heard that a man was involved in the case, was angry. Valentino remained calm. Everyone also found out that the man threatened the participants of the race, who blocked the paths of Marcia and Elsa. Marquise Dominic is tired of listening to a man's excuses. But Valentino had no such intentions. He touched his ring. Immediately, a hole was created in the wall from the golem's impact. At the same time, the man was cursing everyone. After that, the golem came out of the wall, completely covering the man. Jean noticed that the golem was the same as those who wanted to attack the boats. Valentino had a lot of them. The man with a gloomy look activated the magic stone on the ring. At the same moment, a huge number of golems appeared in front of people. They appeared from all sides. Even some surfaced from the depths of the sea. Marquise Dominic was shocked by the scale of the golems. Everyone forgot that the venue for this competition was built by the golems of his Hudson family. The man ordered them to destroy everything. The golems accepted the man's order and launched an attack on everything. A crowd of people tried to escape from the golems heading towards them. Dominic was unhappy with the man's actions, but he made those who did not let him do what he wanted to do guilty. Valentino, having climbed onto the golem, wanted to leave the kingdom of Elias. The Marquis remained far away from him, looking helplessly in his direction. Jean was angry that, instead of admitting guilt, Valentino simply fled the scene. The Marquis ordered him to be kept on guard. Now they needed to evacuate civilians. Reinhardt used magic to attack the golem, thus protecting the defenseless viewer. Jin also started protecting civilians. The guy, using the magic of the laser, aimed at the golems and attacked them. Reiko also did not stay away. The girl quickly sorted out and eliminated the crowd of golems. The contestants decided to use their golems to protect people. Their golems attacked their opponents. The battle continued. At the same time, Litze was concerned about the condition of her golem. He abruptly switched off and stopped, but the next second, he stood up. The girl tried to cheer up the golem. They almost reached the finish line. The golem stared at her blankly. When the girl touched him, he jumped up sharply, thereby scaring Litze. The girl did not understand what he was doing. She was a little unhappy. Due to the sudden movements of the golem, the boat could capsize. The golem got to its feet and walked towards the sea. Litz warned him that he couldn't swim, but he didn't stop. The golem plunged into the water, leaving the girl alone in the sea. Litz was shocked that he just left her. Meanwhile, Reiko dealt with the golem. It was the last of Valentino's army. Jin praised her for that, but Reiko was worried that she had inadvertently failed to notice the presence of these golems. Jin calmed her down. In any case, it was impossible to detect the magic of the deactivated golem. Jin agreed with Reinhardt's words. It was also a miscalculation of the management. They could not have imagined that the construction golems could still be in this place. Dominic also warned Reinhardt, so she apologized to the guy. But the woman did not understand why Valentino did all this for the sake of victory. Marcia also didn't know anything. One day, he asked her to be his wife or a shipbuilder. But Marcia didn't trust him because he looked suspicious. Marcia thought that everything that happened was because of her refusal. That's why she felt guilty. But Jin calmed her down. To go so far, it is unlikely that he would have done it without malicious intent, simply out of a desire to take revenge on Marcia. Valentino was up to something serious. Suddenly, Litze approached them. The girl was tired of manually paddling to the finish line. They couldn't believe Litze had come here. Everyone thought that the girl had run away with Valentino. Litze didn't want to go anywhere with Valentino at all. After all, then she would not have finished. Marcia looked at the girl in awe. Litze also asked about the condition of her boat, the Swan. She said that Valentino was always thinking about either Marcia's pier or the girl's boat. He wanted to return something or burn it. Litze didn't know what he wanted to find. If I had known, I would have told everyone the name right away. She hadn't heard the specific name of that thing. Marcia realized that it was Valentino who was involved in the fire of her pier. Jin thought everything was strange because there could be nothing hidden in the dock or in the boat. Arrow also stood guard. Reinhardt realized that Valentino had hidden the item in the boat, even before Jin modified it. But then Jin would have known about it. Reiko also checked everything. Reinhardt wondered where they could hide it. He asked them about an inconspicuous place in the boat. Jin immediately remembered about the glove compartment. There was a rope and a small case. The guy took out a knife case. He thought it was a valuable item, so he left it there. Marcia was stunned. She thought this knife was made by a guy. Elsa picked up a knife and noticed one interesting detail. The stone on the handle of the knife belonged to an Elverjorit. Elsa reported this to Dominique, who agreed with her assumption. Reinhardt took the case in his hands. He wanted to examine it. There must be a double bottom. Soon the guy found it. There was a contract of sale for Eldredoid. It was signed by Valentino de Hudson. Dominic was angered by this. The man was again disgracing the kingdom of Elias. The Marquis directed his gaze at the company, making Marcia and Litze worried. The girl tried to justify herself. She just wanted to win the competition for once. Everyone has already understood this. Jin didn't understand the whole situation about Elverjorit, so he asked those present about it. Damini explained that Elverjorit was a rare gemstone that could increase magical power. Because of its rarity, it was not suitable for mass production. The price depended on the size, but even for a small stone you can get at least 10 million Torah. It was the price of 10 times the reward for winning. The turnover of aljoy was strictly monitored by the state, and illegal trade was punishable by liquidation. Litze was immediately scared. In any case, Valentino should have been arrested anyway. It would be good if the guards could catch him. Immediately, the knights quickly approached Marquise Dominic. The woman turned to the men who had called out to her. They apologized to her because they had lost track of the criminal Valentino. Dominic, frowning, dismissed the guards. The girl calmed down and turned to the guys. She thanked those for their contribution to help in this matter. She needed to report everything that had happened to the king. Also, to announce an official search for Valentino. Reinhardt wanted to join Dominique. As a diplomat of the Scheller Kingdom, he couldn't stay away. Reinhardt told Jean and Marcia that they could leave the case to them. He was also going to return to his homeland soon, so he invited Jin to join him. The black-haired guy asked Reinhardt to give him time to think about this proposal. He agreed to Jin's request. That's how the situation in the gut was over. Then many bags filled with gold coins appeared. Marcia looked at them with joy. A lot of trouble happened, but they got their prize. Marcia and Jean were glad that they now had 1 million Toras. Jean and Marcia enjoyed the feeling of having a huge amount of money. It was cool for them to have so many coins. Although Marcia still has to pay off her father's debts, and she also has to pay for housing, peer rent, food, and so on. This made the girl depressed. But now she didn't have to worry about her store. The guy thought it was good. Marcia agreed with his words as if she had fallen into a good dream. The girl offered the guy a job as a store manager so that he would work and run the store with her. It was very profitable. Besides, he was the same craftsman who made the boat that won the competition. She was sure that his name would become famous very quickly, but the girl fell silent. Marcia noticed that the guy did not answer her and just looked into the distance. Therefore, pretending that everything was a joke, she lightly hit the guy on the back, thus bringing him to his senses. The guy was leaving 10 days later for Reinhardt Nels's country. So Marcia tried to cheer Jin up. He looked kind of gloomy. The Randalls were from the nobility, so the girl warned the guy not to relax, because he will be involved in serious trouble. Jin remembered Marcia's grudge against the nobles, but he would still be careful. Jean also told Marcia to avoid debts and various crooks, but she knew about it herself. So Marcia and Jean said goodbye to each other. Hitting their hands, they began to walk away from each other. Everyone went in different directions. Marcia stayed with Aro and Jin was still with Reiko. The golems were carrying their master's belongings. The guy suggested that Reiko visit home first since they were heading to the Scheller Kingdom. Reiko agreed with his suggestion. Late in the evening, Valentino was somewhere in the forest. He was annoyed that the golem named Everalio had broken so easily. The man paid a lot for it. Suddenly, an unknown man in a raincoat approached him. He asked about the man's identity. Valentino was waiting for this stranger. The man learned from the fact that commoners prevented him from doing it. The stranger in the raincoat told Tom that he would deal with them. Valentino began to giggle nastily. It was convenient for him that he would deal with his enemies. The man was glad of it. Against the background of the man stood the rebellious golem, Everalio, who was back in the ranks. Now everyone will find out how strong Valentino really was. While in the house, the guy informed everyone that he wanted to create an airplane. Everyone was surprised that he didn't want to create a boat. Reiko didn't understand why he wouldn't just start building an airplane. But Jin suddenly faltered. He could have done it. However, there's about a week left before the meeting with Reinhardt. After all, they had agreed to meet in 10 days, so it's unlikely that Jin will have time to finish everything before the end of the deadline, especially considering how much free time they had left. Still, it was good for the guy to return to the island, home, even if only for a short time. They also couldn't take care of food thanks to the farm. Jean, of course, would like to know where his island is. He also wished he had a weapon to protect everything they had here. Reiko also wanted to get a weapon. She had a limit to her magical abilities. Sometimes you can't even use magic. She also thought that various unforeseen incidents might occur during their journey. The guy thought Reiko was right. It was better for them to prepare for different situations than to regret them later. Therefore, Jin, inspired, wanted to start creating a few different things. The guy was glad to have a case. He wanted to start making things for their trip. They needed to make weapons and armor for protection on the journey. Jin created a firearm, but it was too dangerous. People in this world didn't even know about the existence of such weapons. That's why the guy couldn't use it even for threats. Reiko asked about the weapon that Bean had. The guy remembered it. It was a paralyzing type of weapon. It was also able to create something like a barrier generator. Although its power and portability would not be too good, it was still useful. They will also have to deal with monsters and bandits, and they are very dangerous. Therefore, Jin needed to come up with something in case he met them. For example, in case of an attack by someone like that sea serpent, he didn't want to use a laser or a water blade if there were people nearby. To do this, Jin will have to do several things. The guy started creating things for protection. He soon created a defense for himself. It was a magic walkie-talkie powered by mana, as well as a shock baton, protective and magic rings, and a katana for Reiko. The baton was created to use self-defense. In addition, it was more convenient and portable than the staff. The protective ring protected the wearer from both physical and magical attacks. It protected even from Reiko's fiery spear. The attacking rings contain the magic of each element. Thanks to them, Jin can use magic like the others, and the most important thing among other weapons. It was a katana that Jin had made especially for Reik. The katana could cut even adamantite with just one blow. Everyone was delighted with Jin's work. The defensive weapons looked very impressive. Each of the golems created by Jin wanted to get a weapon from the guy. Jin was happy to give them what they wanted. After a while, the guy was drinking a drink. He noticed that everyone got excited every time the guy created things. Reiko noticed that he was tired, but Jin wanted to create an airplane. He was immediately inspired and cheered up. In the lab, the guy wanted to get down to what he really wants to create. Reiko was holding a box of materials. He used the magic engine of this world as the engine of the plane. Jin also thought it was better to make the wings straight rather than swept. For the fuselage, it will use the technology they used for the golem glider. Since they used adamantite and mithril, there will be no problems with durability. And in the seat, Jin will install a parachute rescue system. Reiko didn't know about the parachute, so the guy explained it to her. But the girl only said that it would be better to use another engine for her own flight when leaving the plane. The guy realized that the girl had given him a good idea. After a while, Jin finally created an airplane. An airplane with movable legs and wheels appeared in front of him. The guy got so carried away with his creation that he even made an entire hangar for the plane. The golems couldn't keep up with the guy's pace. They laid down on the floor from fatigue.